Hello, everybody. It's been a pretty good weekend. I just want to say to Tree and Dave, I appreciate you having me back for the third year. You guys may not know, I don't know how many of you have been here in the past. The first talk I gave up here was about photosynthesis and how food is really an electromagnetic barcode. Last year was the story about the eye, and I kind of finished it off with the picture of my wife so you guys could see the effect. This year is I'm probably more excited than everybody in this room. This is a talk that I've wanted to give for close to 15 years. And I've never been able to give it because I didn't have all the data points that I could say what I'm going to say to you today and tell you that I'm right. Today I can tell you that I am right. And for me, that's a pretty powerful thing because it's a long time coming. So I decided I'm going to change up the effect this year. This year I'm going to tell you exactly what you're going to learn up front, and then I'm going to take it by piece, but I want to start with my kind of music and my noise, and why I put this up here is not for you guys for the music. I want you to pay attention to one thing, the lyrics. The lyrics are why I put this in. And that's where we're going to stop, because that's the whole point. You have to know where the pieces fit. And the way I did it as a neurosurgeon is I took care of thousands of people, including myself, because I knew and saw how they fell apart. And it took a lot of time and effort. And this talk really, for me, began in 2003. Through a lot of biohacks, a lot of reading, a lot of research. Last year when I was here in Vermont, I wanted to say a lot more than I really could, and Dave was really kind enough to invite me back to talk about this. I met a lot of people this weekend, and I'm grateful, that you've stuck with me and listened, and I'm also grateful for the data points that you add into me. Some really cool things actually happened this weekend that you're going to hear about in this talk, so I had to change it. Most of you know Jack likes this area, and I tend to hurt your head quite a bit, but here's the problem. When Jack tells you all you need to do is use the sun and nature to help you, you're like, wait a minute, it can't be that simple. There's no way. If you're a food person, a microbiome guy, a guy that checks people's turds on the equator, it can't be that simple. And it turns out it really is that simple. Like, you don't have to come to my company and buy any kind of pills to take. Everything I'm going to tell you about today is free, okay? Absolutely free, okay? This is nature's poetry. This talk that I'm going to give you is about where these two Venn diagrams meet, and that's the real key. Some of the key things that you need to be aware of. Most of you know that I'm about light, water, and magnetism. That's fundamentally what everything in the mitochondria is about. It turns out this pile of garbage can look like something really different. And you're going to hear a couple of things today that will absolutely blow your mind. And it's all tied to light. Light does some very unusual things. So, everybody in the room, this is a rhetorical question. What would be a clue that maybe a theory that you came up with 15 years ago might be directionally accurate? For me, the answer is pretty simple. I think as a scientist, a clinician, a neurosurgeon, to be plausible, you have to be able to make predictions and see if the predictions come true and see how it goes. So most of you may not know my total history, but I wrote a document called the Quilt Document 15 years ago. It's on my Dr. Jack Kruse website. You can read it. It's got 30 different levies of how we protect the cell so that you can stay away from disease. So about a year ago, after some of these key papers that you're going to hear about today, I took a lot of my information offline and put it on a Patreon blog. The reason for that goes back to what I said here in 2016. I have a lot of people watching me and what I'm doing because what I'm doing is very disruptive, because my solutions go completely against what everybody else is going to sell you, okay? I just need you to change your behavior and reconnect with nature, and that's not what they're looking for. The other thing I want to say is when you believe something and you have good data, don't let anybody, especially a critic or a skeptic, tell you it's not possible. The answer is always there. Most of us in this room right now are still in what I would call the molecular biology or cell biology paradigm, and most of my members that are in the audience know that a mitochondria is all about quantum biology. It's all about electrons, protons, and light, and you kind of really need to know about those. 2016, I came here, and I told you all about photosynthesis. It's not on here. This was last year. And you see all the light. This year, it's about the skin, and does skin in the game. If you like what you hear this year, you may invite me back for next year so I can really tell you how the microbiome works, because you'll be very interested in that story. In fact, one of the things I'd like to extend from the stage is Jeff Leach made another one of my predictions come true at this very meeting. And we'll get into that later on. What's the key take home of this talk? Nature is completely intolerant of any light that she did not create. And that's axiomatic. Never make the mistake. The mistake that we're all making right now is we're having this talk in the barn. Here's the big key. On the top of this slide, that's a pretty famous quote that all of my members know about. I said almost 8 years ago, with time it'll be shown that what happens on the surfaces. What are the surfaces I'm speaking of? Your skin, your eye, your gut, and your lung. Those are the four key. They will determine the biochemistry that happens below. When I said it, everybody thought I was nuts. Now I'm going to give you lesson number 1. Blue light hazard is the cause of every disease that each one of you knows. And I can say that definitively now. Now I'm going to prove it. In 1999, I read a paper on melanopsin. Didn't know anything about it. Just so you know, it's an intrinsic photoreceptor that's present in our eye. I talked a lot about it last year. If you didn't see the talk, go back and pull it up on YouTube and watch it. Basically what this is a blue light detector in our eye. After doing a lot of research, what was the kind of prediction that I made? I believed that we had to have a blue light receptor on our skin because it made no sense with all the science that I was reading that we wouldn't have one. Turned out in 2009 when I was going through this, I found another one, which was neuropsin, which was discovered in our eye, cornea, and skin. When I saw that neuropsin was also in the skin as a UVA receptor, I said something's up. So I came to Vermont last year, and I want you to take a look at when this article was published, around November. So it was about 6 months after I was in Vermont. And what that paper said is that melanopsin is not only in your skin, it's also in your subcutaneous fat. So I got a huge bonus. And that was a real important thing. Because we're talking, this data now is for you guys, 6 years old, or say 6 months old. What else are you going to learn about today? That you're all made of time crystals. There's 3 key time crystals that we'll talk about on the next slide. This is a future Patreon blog that I haven't even released yet. That's the title. Methionine, tryptophan, and DHA are all time crystals. Anybody want to take a guess what all of them have in common? Anybody? Shoot. Close. Methionine and tryptophan are the 2 time crystals. Methionine is an essential amino acid that we all have to eat. That means it's a time crystal from the environment to talk to your mitochondria. Anybody else know what's important about methionine? It's an amino acid that has a codon, a single codon. What's a codon? 3 base pairs from DNA gives it a code. On Earth, we have 500 amino acids. DNA only codes for 20. We have 4 aromatic amino acids. Methionine and tryptophan are the only 2 coded for by DNA that have a single codon. And you'll find out why that's important. They've been on this earth for 3.8 billion years. And methionine has another key player. It actually is the start codon for every protein, not just in you, in eukaryotes for 600 million years. That means all complex life on the planet. Well, tryptophan happens to be the time crystal that you create, and you guys learned about it last year in the eye. It's an aromatic amino acid that absorbs UV light to get programmed. And that's the one that your internal clock uses. It's one of the gears of the eye clock. Turns out, now I can tell you, it's also one of the gears of your skin clock. Because technically, now that we know that melanopsin is in your skin, everything, your skin is basically an eye, okay? Now, the big one is DHA. You learned this 2 years ago. DHA has been present in eukaryotes and humans. It's never been replaced one time. Anybody know what cell membrane it's not been present in ever? The inner mitochondrial membrane. Why? Because it's bacterial in origin. But every single cell membrane, including the outer cell membrane in you, is loaded with DHA. And this is going to become really important. What's the next thing you're going to hear? Your skin makes a laser utilizing sunlight, and it reverses all diseases. It needs your sub-Q fat to actually make it. And you can see that picture up there is a picture of a pig. So some of the skeptics in the audience may say, yeah, that's a eukaryote, but it's not humans. This study was done in 2011, Boston, not too far from you. Human skin makes lasers too. So, what's the science that we're going to discuss today? Science that I guarantee you nobody in this room has ever heard of. One is called femtochemistry, that was given the Nobel Prize in 1999. The other one is called attophysics, and it was just discovered probably 3 or 4 years ago. What is femtochemistry really all about? It's about the science of small time, quantum time, so that we can tell how light hits an electron or hits a proton and gets programmed so that it goes into certain parts of our proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates that make up our cell. What is attophysics? Attophysics, as you can see, it's 10 to the minus 18th action spectra, meaning that this is high UV, very fast, quick. This is the time scale that you all operate on. Well, some of you are not operating on it right now because you're inside here and you're not under that light above. So here's the key. You heard from Dr. Boros earlier that deuterium is really bad. And it turns out the real answer is deuterium isn't as bad if it's in the right place. And it turns out your circadian mechanism in your body controls where the deuterium goes, whether it becomes a bad or a good actor. So how do we do this? That's what the talk's about. So, skin in the game. I want you to take a close look at what you see up there. You see our nearest relative and you see a baby. Take a good look at the difference. Okay? A chimp has no subcutaneous fat. It's born with its brain almost fully developed. Okay? It can get around and do things for itself. It's hairy. Its skin is completely covered. Its forehead is shrunken because it doesn't have frontal lobes. Your babies tend to come out of the vagina falling around like a floppy baby. They're as fat as shit. They float in water, and nothing can be different. They share almost 99.7% homology in their DNA, but take a good look at that picture. Do they look the same? Not even close. Why is that? What is the big deal? Well, skin became part of the game in 2017. And I want you to take a close look. You're going to see this picture over and over because I'm going to warn you, these slides here are going to be very detailed in some places. But these are going to be warm-ups. Take a look at all this here. As soon as you see that here, I want you to notice how deep blue light penetrates. It goes past the epidermis, into the dermis, down here where the muscles, skin, and blood vessels are. That's a really big deal. And it's a really big deal now that you know that melanopsin happens to be in this area too. So, for those of you here in 2016, I stood on this stage over there, right on that spot, with Magda Havis sitting in front of me, who's supposedly an EMF expert. And I said to her that day, put your glasses on, Magda. You need to protect your eyes from blue light because blue light is the #1 non-native EMF that is going to destroy you. She didn't buy it. Well, why was I so sure I was right? This paper came out in 2014. That was 2 years before I was in Vermont. And I knew that if it was in the blood vessels, it was only a matter of time before we'd find it out in the skin and the fat. Turns out I was right. So here's the take home about your eye protection. It's no longer good enough. You also have to protect your skin. So this is good news for a lot of the ladies. When you're inside, I want you as covered as possible. The single most important area to cover is right around your thyroid gland. It's a really big deal. So I know this is Vermont. It's not New England. I should say not Boston. But those big sweaters that you guys like up here, they're good for indoors, especially when you're around blue light. The other key thing is, you know, Dave, since I've come up here in 16, he's been really cool with all you guys. The fact that he bought everybody glasses because he knew the eye was a big deal because he's one of my silver members, you know, and he's done it again, and he's continued to do it because he understands it. I don't expect him next year to buy you clothes too, but it's still one of those things that you need guys to know that you need to really dress differently when you're indoors under a blue light environment, and that's a big deal, especially when you work. Again, this is kind of important to hear. The indoor, I should say, the monkeys in this room all tend to live into something connected to the power grid or blue light. In other words, the spectrum is not normal. Next slide you're really going to like because it's one of Chris Masterjohn's slides, and he's a favorite at Western A. Price. But I'm going to tell you why it's a big deal. And this one I want you to keep in your head. This is a key point. Melanopsin is an opsin. All opsins in diurnal animals are bound with loose covalent bond. That means it's not strong. You know what that means? It means blue light can break it. Now, Chris used this to say vitamin A and vitamin D protect each other. But now that we have this data about melanopsin, do you know what it means? It means when vitamin A goes down, it affects vitamin D tremendously. Tremendously. So guess what? All opsins are bound to vitamin A in humans. Every single one of them. So, what does that mean? That means blue light destroys the vitamin A cycle. It also destroys the melatonin cycle anywhere melanopsin is found. What's the biggest organ in the body, guys? So do you think this might be a bigger deal than everybody thinks? It is, because guess what it controls? That means the surface of your skin controls one of the two, and mitochondria only have two self-regulatory pathways. What are they called? Autophagy and apoptosis. How do you get cancer? Anybody know? You only need two effects. Say it. Loss of apoptosis and slow electron chain transport. You cannot get cancer if those two things aren't true, contrary to what anybody else tells you. It's axiomatic. So let's talk about what blue light really does. Last year, you learned about a lot of the ocular effects. I even showed you how the eye really is where obesity starts. This year, I had to update the slide because now we have skin effects, and it causes all these. And see this one right down here? I'm going to teach you something. You just got a really cool lecture this morning about microbiome. You know what you didn't hear? Anybody know how fast enterocytes get taken out by the body? Normally, in a normal person? 48 hours. Guess what controls it? The circadian mechanism. So guess what? If you eat garbage, your body says we can get rid of it. Want to hear something else cool? Last year I talked to you about fiber optic cables in your eyes called Mueller cells. Today you heard him from Zach about the ones in your enterocytes. So when you blow them up and they look like an aperture, do you know what's on the cell membranes of those things? DHA. So guess what? The more blue light you get, you want to know what really causes leaky gut? Because all the cool stuff that he showed you, it's all true. But it doesn't matter when you can replace your cells in 24 to 48 hours. That's right. When the mechanism's intact, it doesn't matter. Who gave me the proof that I am axiomatically true about that? My friend Jeff. Jeff came and see me last night, hit me in the chest, and I told him, I said, dude, I could kiss you. And I said, there's nothing better than an observation from the field that confirms the science that's being published. You know what he said? From this podium, because I'm going to give you the Jack Kruse version of what he said. He said, they basically ate shit on a shingle, including Fanta and soda and antibiotics, and when I checked their shit, it was the same. And he also said he did really well when he was over there, and he couldn't figure out why. Does anybody want to know what the difference in, say, Zach's patients are and what Jeff found? The HASDA is on the equator. Okay? On the equator, folks. You know what that means? That means that their redox potential is through the roof. That's why they can eat baboon shit out of the pool. That's why Jeff feels so good when he's there. But here's the crazy thing. It's also the reason why they don't have problems with their gut either. It's also the reason why they have low disease. It's all about the sun, because guess what? The more sun you get, the more melatonin you make. The more melatonin you make, the better your mitochondria is. In other words, you can replace the bad engines constantly. So remember, Zach's place is in Virginia. He's about the 35th latitude. Most of the people that he sees, they're not inside the 20s. Is he ever going to see this effect? Nope. Guess what? Zach needs to talk to Jeff, not to Jack tonight. Okay? He really needs to talk to Jeff. Jeff's, when he said that from up the stage, I almost wanted to come on the stage and kiss him. Because I have had the belief, and I have kept it under my hat for a long time, that diet has zero effect on the microbiome, provided your circadian mechanism is intact. And that's the key. The reason why this works, remember, in the eye and the brain, you're not designed to take things out by apoptosis, which is cell suicide. You do that, you're going to wind up at Alzheimer's disease. So the name of the game is different tissues work differently. And it turns out that your skin controls all the gut peripheral clocks because melanopsin's in the skin. And this is one of the examples I tried to tell you guys last year, that a nonlinear effect, a small thing, leads to a massive amplification that completely changes your perspective about how things work. So if you want to buy Restore, go for it. You know what I'm going to tell you to buy? Sunshine. Take a trip to Mexico, because it's a lot cheaper and a lot better for you. Okay, here's the clinical conundrum. And the doctors in the room or clinicians in the room, raise your hand. All right, not too many. This I put in there for you. How many times have you put, say, a big, fat, obese diabetic on vitamin D, you checked it in 3 months and it came back and the levels never went up? Anybody had that experience? Nobody's saying anything. Guess what? It's the #1 thing when I go to medical conferences that doctors come up and ask me. Now we know the reason why. Because blue light destroys vitamin A. As vitamin A drops, your circadian mechanism is shot because it's decreased in the plasma. When that happens, autophagy is destroyed, melatonin levels drop. So what's the implications that are tied to all this? When this happens, you can't make sulfated amino acids into the things you want in the blood. And you will see signs of that later in the talk. Last year, I showed you a picture of a blood vessel with cholesterol sulfate in it. And you have to make that from LDL cholesterol. Guess what makes that, folks? Equatorial sun. Even the sun that we had yesterday in Vermont, except for all you people that kept your clothes on. This slide came from an N. Haynes study. I just want you to take a look. You have an 18 microgram drop, which leads to 20%, 22% issues with sleep disorders. So as your vitamin A level drops, your vitamin D level drops in kind because they're yoked. Why are they yoked? You'll find that out soon enough. They're linked by something in the embryo called neuroectoderm. And I'm sure some of you heard that, but neuroectoderm is a tissue that makes skin and brain in the adult form. So this should explain to you why vitamin A and vitamin D are yoked. That's why they protect each other from toxicity. But the bad news is, now that we know that melanopsin destroys the vitamin A cycle, now we know that circadian biology trumps everything. It's not even arguable anymore since this paper's come out. So the big key is, since all the indoor silly talking monkeys in this room predominantly live inside, we got a big problem. That means we need to change what we're doing. And that loose covalent bond, why did I bring that up? You know what the difference between a mouse and, say, a rat is? These are all the studies that Chris Masterjohn studies. Turns out that nocturnal mammals have a scotopic retina, not a photopic one like everybody in this room. But here's the big deal. Do you know what the bond is from their vitamin A to their opsin? It's a strong covalent bond. In other words, blue light can't break it. You know why? Because they live at night. That's why nature built them that way. Yet, every single nutrition study done probably by this organization and the NIH, guess who they study? Rats and mice who don't have your kind of opsin. And yet, whatever you learned in that study, most of you that are food people in here, you believe that stuff. Now you know why I never have. The key here is high intensity blue light. That means the blue light that's in every fake light in this place. It suppresses melatonin secretion. It ruins your pineal gland. It ruins your retina, as I showed you last year. And now it ruins the circadian mechanism via your skin, because your skin is the largest organ in your body. What's the corollary to this, guys? What are the collateral damages? This slide I put up, you can take a look at that bottom, that PaleoFX, when I was their keynote speaker, and I started to talk about this. Boy, they didn't like it then. But see, I couldn't really argue because I didn't have the paper that I have now. I can tell you right now, I'm laughing at them in a big way, a really big way. What does this mean? This slide I put in just for Jeff. The skin controls all the peripheral gut issues. Any clock gene that's present anywhere in your body is controlled in combination between your eye and your skin. So you have to have skin in the game. You have to have your skin in the light. And there's going to be some good news for you people that live in Vermont. This isn't always a bad story. It's actually a pretty good story. The big key that you need to realize is that melatonin is destroyed and DHA is destroyed all over your body when this happens. So that means that your dietary sources and needs go through the roof when you're blue light toxic. So does anybody know the name of my book? It's called The Epi-Paleo Prescription. What's really the key tenet? Eat a lot of seafood. Get outside in the sun. Well, maybe now you can see why I said that. So here's the key. What's some of the collateral effects? I know most of my members in this room know this, but I don't know the rest of you guys do. How do we make sex steroids in our body? LDL cholesterol, you know the stuff the doctors have you scared shitless of, the bad stuff, gets converted to something called pregnenolone, and then pregnenolone becomes every single sex steroid hormone in your body. DHEA, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all of them. Also vitamin D. But guess what happens? When you get blue light, you wind up becoming infertile and having lots of problems with your hormone panel that you go to see the guys in Cenogenics and get put on exogenous testosterone to help yourself, and that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Take a look at the bottom of the slide. To convert LDL cholesterol to pregnenolone, what does it say? You need vitamin A and T3. Last year, you learned how to make T3 through your eye by seeing the AM sunrise. And now you just found out that Jerry Springer at night got rid of your vitamin A. Not a good situation. So let's get serious now. This slide, I know it may be tough to see, but this is from Dr. Wunsch from Germany. You saw a lot of his slides last year. Now that we know melanopsin's in the skin, I told you last year, the raw optics glasses and the blue blocking glasses that Dave's provided for everybody have to block 435 to 465. Why is that? This slide will show you. Take a look where 435 is. That's a 1 correlation. I mean, it's the worst light you can get. And it goes all the way up to 465. Now that we know it's in the skin, I think we got to go all the way to 410 at night. And then we got to go all the way down into the green, because you can still see at 485, we're at 0.4. So let's just say you're a 70-year-old guy. Even some green light could bother you at night. So you have to be mindful of how serious this is. And this data was generated in the eye. Now we know that this data is accurate for the skin. It's a huge, big deal. So most of you know that I'm not really a big fan of food gurus. I think you could figure that out. So when these people wrote this book and I mocked them 5 years ago, they didn't take too kindly to it, but I made this and put it on Instagram 5 years ago. Now I can tell you it's not Jack Kruse's opinion anymore. It's actually really true. So you need to understand that you need to become light gurus and not food gurus. The other key thing, I showed you this last year. The first sign of childhood obesity is when the choroid thickens in your eye. You can see that was done very recently. The implications for the skin are a big deal. And this is where we got to get into some head-scratching stuff, because I know you don't know this. Most of you know that I did my medical training at LSU. There's a famous researcher there named Nicholas Bazan. Hence, it's called the Bazan effect. What is the Bazan effect? It is how you replace DHA in your retina and your skin. So we need to go through a little review so you know how it works, since now you know blue light destroys DHA. In the eye, with the photoreceptor, you see another opsin, you have a short loop. That short loop, basically, every time you get sunlight in your eye, you're destroying the DHA. Your eye is built in by nature to recycle it. So you never have to eat oysters every week, okay? It's a really good thing for us. The problem becomes when this becomes broken because you're constantly not having eye protection. You don't have your raw optics on. You don't have your UVEX on. You don't have any kind of protection on. This becomes broken. So how do you replace the DHA everywhere in your body except the inner mitochondrial membrane? Right here, the liver. And Jeff, guess what they control? The gut clocks. See that, how that works? That's why your guys are so damn healthy. That's why you can eat baboon shit when you're over there. Here's the key. If the liver is shut down because you're in blue light, remember that skin picture I showed you? That the blue light penetrates all the way down? Those of you who don't know, your liver is only about 1 centimeter or 2 below your bottom rib right here. And guess what? You just ruined your backup system. So that means your circadian mismatch is even worse. So when I was 360 pounds, it was a really big deal to understand this. So I had to protect my skin at night and make sure that I was buck-ass naked during the day to use it. What happens when you get real obese, or say you do eat a bad diet, or say you're a vegetarian, a type 2 diabetic? And we didn't talk about this in Dr. Boris's talk, but we're going to talk about it here. You get a liver that looks like that, okay? That's called a fatty liver. Most people have heard of it. And what happens in a fatty liver? Deuterium from your food doesn't get cleared out every 24 to 48 hours by the circadian mechanism, so it's broken. So guess what happens? The deuterium gets stuck in your liver. Now, where does it get stuck? It gets stuck in the places Dr. Boros just told you. What are those places? the TCA and urea cycle. What is the TCA cycle? That's where you fat burn. What's the urea cycle? That's how you break down every protein in your body with the exception of a couple. Guess where they meet? It's called something called Krebs bicycle. What does Krebs bicycle sit on? It sits on a cell membrane, okay? What did I tell you about cell membranes? They're loaded with DHA. So when that cell membrane blows up because of the blue light, the deuterium that's in that cell membrane gets caught inside the TCA cycle and the urea cycle and slows the cycle down. In other words, it's like having a 10-speed and putting the brakes on and stops it. And if you can't get those two things to spin, if you're a good Western A price person and you eat a ton of fat, what good is it if your TCA cycle and urea cycle can't spin? You have to use glycolysis, and you have to use another pathway called the PPP. And you want to know all you need to know about biochemistry from Jack Kruse? Because it's very simple. When oxygen tensions are high, you use the TCA and urea cycle. When oxygen tensions are low because your mitochondria are broken by blue light, you have to use glycolysis in the PPP. Your mitochondria makes the switch for you. So, what's the story about deuterium? When it's in the wrong place, it can be deadly. But when it's in the right place, it can actually save your life. And we have to talk about the right place. That's coming towards the end of the lecture. So, we have my colleagues, the dermatologist and the ophthalmologist. I know most of you in this room have probably been scolded, since most of you are whiteys from New England, like I am. They tell you that only the sun causes cancer and natural light is bad. So don't worry about it. You can just take vitamin D pills and be fine. So now I think you're beginning all to realize really how stupid and ignorant that is, because it turns out, what does the data say? Two key things. It says, A, the lower your vitamin D level is, the higher your melanoma rate is, the higher your basal cell cancer rate is, the higher your squamous cell carcinoma is. So if the sun caused it, explain the literature. They can't, okay? It turns out, if you're following the talk really well, guess what causes those things? The lights that you've been baking under for the last 2 days. And your skin is the one that really controls it. Why? Because it's a lot bigger surface area than your retina. And that means your circadian mechanism is exquisitely attuned to the light in your environment. It turns out that most of us now, as you heard in a couple of talks today, we live inside. We're silly talking monkeys that live inside. That's a real problem. Now, let's talk about where Western A Price gets it right, okay? Animal fat is loaded with vitamin A. So you can make the choice to eat animal fats to replace it. Plant foods and the carotenoids in them are a waste of time. You can't replace your vitamin A cycle being a vegan. And most people who are vegans don't even know that there's a difference between plant sources of vitamin A and animal sources. So animal sources are right. This can be used to offset the blue light hazard. Here's the reality though. Since the skin has melanopsin in it, you can't eat enough food to make the offset. In other words, you have a quantum disease. What's the reason? Vitamin A has a loose covalent bond to melanopsin because you're a diurnal animal, but you live a nocturnal animal's life. Every time you put the computer on, every time you watch Jerry Springer, every time you watch the Patriots, it's a problem. It's a real big problem that we all need to embrace. I'm not saying it's fun, but it's got huge implications. So what is a mitochondriac? You've probably seen the t-shirts around. These are the people that I teach that when other things flummox people, we don't stop. We go deeper and deeper and deeper. Why? Any paradox to us is kind of like a time to really dig down and go deep. And I've taught them all that they were going to learn just how big a deal skin in the game was. And most of you know that I have a lot of respect for Weston A. Price. Like him, I'm a dentist, a former dentist. What I think he did was absolutely magnificent. He's always going to get my utmost respect. But as I said here in 2016, I'm going to tell you, Jack Kruse wasn't the first mitochondriac. Guess who was? Western A. Price. See, the problem is the foundation has really bought hook, line, and sinker that the food did this. But I want you to take a look at something. These cats came out of Weston A. Price's book. They lived in the same place that Jeff's people did. These guys even look better than Jeff's guys. But remember when Jeff showed his picture yesterday? Guys in a loincloth with spears. None of you look like that, and certainly none of you live on the equator. There was no Gold's Gyms for these guys to look like this. They got the light right. And turns out every single place that Weston A. Price looked for the natives, guess what? They all had skin in the game. So if you want to keep believing it's the food, that's fine with me, but it's dead wrong. These are my misfits. I make them come down to Mexico every winter solstice when it's really bad. And you see right here, I said, this is where we make the laser. So you're going to learn about that. So what kind of light was the Weston A. Price light? That's what sunlight looks like. That's the spectrum. This is incandescent. This is fluorescent. Warm LED, cool, and halogen. You can see, this is a Sesame Street question, do they look the same? No. Okay, take a look at this. This is what the sun looks like as it rises and falls around the 35th latitude. And this is a time-lapse photography. So that means the zenith in the sun also isn't the same. That means that there's a diurnal change. Here's the key one I want to show you, and I'm going to point this one out. LED bulb, melatonin suppression, 80%. I told Dave Hollenbach here that he needs to talk to the people of B. These are all LED bulbs, people, above your head. How about a compact fluorescent? Around 80%. Most of you, especially the old people in the room like me, I did all my training under these bulbs. Look at the incandescent. Still not so good. I mean, the spectrum ain't too bad, but guess what? 40%. Anybody willing to throw 40% of their DHA and vitamin A in the toilet now? No. Now look at this one. Jack's favorite light, the candle. 2%. Okay? And if you take a look, you go to a candle OLED, it's actually not bad. So if you want to go with a modern light, you can do this. Now, I didn't put this slide in for Jeff, but this is really Jeff's key slide. This is true in Vermont. So I want you to notice something. I know you can't see it with my bottle here. Let me move that. Because this is one of those slides that food people kind of need to really get. Down here at sunrise, it's 1800 Kelvin. That's the color temperature of light. At sunset, it's 16,000 Kelvin. Here's the crazy thing. It varies. That's the diurnal change that you face every day. But here's the seasonal change. In December here in Vermont, only 13% of your natural sunlight is blue because you live at a high latitude. In June, it's 26%. You're designed to do that because your growth and metabolism pathways need to have the heavier blue light. That's the solar issue. But I want you to know something I said to Jeff last night. What's the difference between Vermont, or say Virginia, where Zach's people are, or where Jeff's people are? Jeff, here's the key. On the equator, sun never changes from one day to the next. It's consistent all the time. What changes? Jeff said it. He has a wet and dry season. Isn't that right, Jeff? The light never changes. And guess what Jeff said? To all of you, and I want to make sure you heard it, their microbiome didn't change either. And his hypothesis was diet would. And guess what? It's not true. Turns out the sun on your skin controls your microbiome too. When you heard the stuff about the breasts from Jeff, and then you heard something about Zach, did you know the two bacteria that Zach talked about are both prokaryotes that are killed by what? UV light. So ladies in the room, just put your hand up. How many have had their girls out one time in the last 7, 8 years? All my people, nobody else. Okay. Now you know why I made my wife get naked to lose all her weight and get her circadian mechanism back. Because I knew the skin was a bigger deal. And it turns out, when you really understand this, it goes back to the original slide. And I want you to look at this really carefully, because we're going to dissect this. All the sub-Q fat and blood vessels are down here. That means this is where all the melanopsin receptors are. Look what light gets there. Blue light, UVA light. But look at these two, UVC and UVB. I guarantee you, most of the scientists in this room said, wait a minute, UVC light is known as light that kills you. You know, it kills everything. It sterilizes this and that. Well, that may not be totally true. The next slide is absolutely true. It's on my Instagram account. I posted it right after the melanopsin paper came out. This is the most accurate pictogram you're ever going to see from me ever again. These are two people sleeping. This is Jack when he was on residency. This was the nurse calling me. This was Jack getting french fried and me partially killing my wife. That was my life for 25 years. And notice, that's reality, not hyperbole. That's how serious this is, guys. Now, the next slide is to definitively refute the cause of bacteria. That's how you get rid of breast cancer. Why? I want you to look at what I wrote down here on the bottom. UV light makes melatonin. It makes vitamin D3. Does anybody know what vitamin D3 does to cytochrome 1, cytochrome 4? It slows electron chain transport. What does that mean? When you slow it down, apoptosis has to work. What did I tell you before? Two things at a cancer cell that uses a Warburg metabolism that you heard from Dr. Boros. It has to have apoptosis inhibited, and ECT has to be super duper fast. Vitamin D does that. Guess what else does? The vitamin D receptor. Hey, Jeff, the vitamin D receptor is in the gut too. But you know the gut doesn't get any sun, right? Because I just showed you on the skin, it doesn't penetrate. So why in the hell would nature put the VDR receptor in your gut? You're going to learn. What else gets taken out? Estrogen, testosterone are destroyed by UV light in your skin. So you're designed to make your sex steroid hormones early in the morning, and as soon as UVA and UVB show up, that's the off switch for the pituitary gland. Most of you don't have that off switch. So when you live like this over a period of time and your gland gets shut down, your hormone panel looks terrible. And you think inaccurately, well, I need to go see the urologist or the OB/GYN to get on fake pills to fix. You can't fix this. It's a quantum problem related to surface light. Now, this one may interest Jeff too. Everybody knows the Okinawans. They have one of the best diets. Does anybody know what their diet is fundamentally tied to? Seafood and pork. Anybody want to know what's in seafood? DHA. Anybody know what the #1 amino acid is in pork? Cysteine and methionine. Oh, the other time crystal. As soon as they put technology in Japan, remember Dan Butner, he wrote the book about the blue zones? The Okinawans lived the longest. In one generation, they now have the shortest lifespan in Japan. So if you believe in Darwin, you believe in Richard Dawkins, that slide's for you. Next one, let's talk about this one. Now I get to pound on some of my members. Melatonin is made from tryptophan. Tryptophan is one of the amino acids that I talked to you about last year in the eye. But I want you to notice this right up here, 240 to 300. You know why I'm mad at them? Nobody said, Jack, 240 to 280 is UVC light. Where the hell do we get UVC light from, guys, if we don't get it from the sun? Because, you know, the textbooks say that it gets blocked by the ozone layer. So why would nature do something like this? Let's look at what melatonin does. There's the photon trap you learned about last year. That's the phenol ring. It's the hormone of darkness, but it's made in light. It only gets activated at night. It helps sleep. That means it helps autophagy. It regenerates every single photoreceptor in your body. What do you now know about the skin? Melanopsin is one of those photoreceptors. So that means melatonin is critical for your skin. What happens? It reduces energy production. You know what that means, guys? It slows electron chain transport. So that means it's protective of cancer because it slows it down. Nitric oxide does that. What light makes nitric oxide, guys? UVA light. Right there. There's the VDR receptor. Those are the three things that slow electron chain transport, so you protect apoptosis. This is all the BS that everybody talks about, but here's the big one. The production in your tissue, it lowers your sex steroid hormones. Here's the big one that Jeff would probably be interested in. It stimulates the immune system, the T lymphocytes. That's how he's able to drink water with baboon turds in it, because it's incredible the way it acts. And it's an antagonist to cortisol. So you can see that this is the day-night cycle. But here's the key one. It controls, on the bottom, mitochondrial DNA function. In other words, when you have a bad power plant for any reason at all, and since this talk is about the skin and blue light, that means that this is the hormone that changes that situation. It gets it out. That process is called mitophagy, which is a version of autophagy, which is cell recycling. Okay, for my members, here's the spectrum. So the food guys are off the hook now. Take a look at this, guys. 200 to 280. Not one of you have asked me a question in 5 years. Why is this the case? So that tells you melatonin is 240 to 300 and it's made out of tryptophan. Where the hell's the light coming from? If it ain't coming from the sun, where does it come from? It looks like we're just getting the stuff from 280 and above. Well, let's go back to last year. Here's the slide from last year, and here's tryptophan, and here's the spectral curves. Notice how high it goes up. Down here on the bottom, that's 220, 240. Tryptophan goes up even higher. Take a look at this, tyrosine. Anybody know what's made out of tyrosine that I'm always hounding people about? Dopamine. Guess what? If you have bad friends, you got a problem with this amino acid. Right here, this one goes all the way up. It goes all the way to 200 nanometers. Take a look at this one, histidine. Anybody know what histidine's important for? All you white folks from Vermont, pay attention. This is why you get red, right here. It makes your skin have an erythema response. Why? Because it absorbs almost everything below 240. So when you learn how to build your solar callus, you learn how to control this process. Look at the other one, phenylalanine. It also goes up deep in the UVC range. Remember, guys, everybody in this room, including me, before I figured this crap out, thought that UVC light sterilized the planet. Why in the hell are we going to use UVC light in nature? Well, we're going to teach you a little bit something about tryptophan now. Tryptophan, I told you, is extremely complex. And it's so complex in biochemistry, just be glad that I didn't put one of those stupid slides up with all the different things in it, because you would have went to sleep. This is all you need to know. When UV light excites that phenol ring in tryptophan, it becomes a ketone in the TCA cycle. When it has no 240 to 300 nanometer light, it becomes a glucogenic amino acid. It acts like sugar. Guess what else? See that ACC? No, it's not a slide about sports. That's the codon for tryptophan. It only has one. This is the internal time crystal that shares information via water networks to DHA and to methionine in your body. And it turns out this is your seasonal adjustment. When you move away from the light, this is the amino acid that tells the body that it needs to use a different program in a different metabolic pathway. Light controls this. So we're back to our silly talking monkeys. This guy lives outside all the time. This one, his mom is going to put sunblock on him. And that really ruins things. Plus, when he gets a little older, they'll put clothes on him. That'll ruin things further. What's the key? Take a look at this. The human eyes can only see 380 to 780. You guys learned that last year. 380 is way above those 200s. We don't see in the UV range. What does the sun produce? This is what NASA says right here, 280 to 3,000. So you know what NASA's saying now? NASA's saying the sun does not make any UVC light that falls to Earth because the ozone layer blocks it. Let's go back to this picture again, guys, because I told you you see a lot. What does that say right there? UVC can't penetrate your epidermis. You know what that means? It puts a lot of pressure when it does come, or if it does come, from the sun. UVB light, a little bit more pressure, but it only gets to the base of the epidermis. UVA gets all the way down, probably into your dermal fat pad, and that is the light that makes nitric oxide. Here's the NASA picture. There's the ozone layer. There's where it's blocked. Take a look at it. From 100 nanometers to 280, it's blocked. So now we've got 2 or 3 slides that show you the light that tryptophan uses is not present on Earth. Now, let's talk about Jerry Pollack. Everybody know Jerry Pollack? He wrote the great book, The Fourth Phase of Water. This is all I want you to know. Jerry told us in his experiments, when he put red light on water, it changes its viscosity and its refraction to 270 nanometer light. Hey guys, mitochondriacs, that's UVC light too. Why in the hell would tryptophan and water use UVC light when the sun doesn't make it? You think that's a little bit of a paradox? It's a little problem for us? Well, let's look at what Jerry really said. When you look at this, the sun makes this light, 42% of it. The EZ always begins with red light. Hence the reason why one of my members put the red light up there to try to offset the rest of the crap that's in here. What does that do? It makes an EZ. What does EZ stand for, guys? Exclusion zone. What does it exclude? Protons. What was the last lecture about? Protons from Dr. Boros. That is a battery. We call it a capacitor that creates a net negative charge. Several people at this conference asked me, Jack, what is a net negative charge in a cell called in a mitochondria? Well, it's called the redox potential. Your redox potential is the electrical difference from cytochrome 1 to oxygen, okay? It's designed to be around negative 400 millivolts. That's what creates a 30 million volt charge in your mitochondria that's equivalent to a bolt of lightning. That's when you're healthy. What happens here? When you have a low redox potential, you also get low melatonin. So you know what that means? Causes a problem with vitamin A, with DHA. In other words, all your cell membranes begin to fall apart and deuterium starts to get in the wrong place. So this is the slide from last year. What did I tell you? And I was kind of hoping Dr. Boros would go into this a little bit. Basically, everybody learned in 3rd grade that photosynthesis is CO2 plus water, sunlight equals sugar. Your mitochondria reverse this. What do they make? CO2 and water. You heard Dr. Boros say the water that the mitochondria make is really the key. Why? Mitochondria are not an energy story. It's an information quanta transfer story. Turns out that that water can carry more information from the sun directly to your mitochondria so that the cell can organize appropriately and do things that it needs to do. And it turns out the 2 flywheels inside the mitochondria that you need to care about are the TCA cycle and the urea cycle when you happen to be a primate with a big neocortex, because you need all the energy you can to make it spin. That's the real reason you have to use light hydrogen and not deuterium, because in this area it is absolutely toxic to the cell. But is it always toxic? No, because it turns out, and I have another slide coming down the road, photosynthetic pathways all deplete deuterium. So that means the entire food web on this planet is tied to photosynthesis. So all your food is going to be less than ocean water. He told you in the last talk, ocean water is 155 parts per million deuterium. Turns out foods are much lower than that. And the reason why is they're all taken apart to electrons and protons in those cycles. And those 4 cycles, the only 4 you need to know is TCA, urea, high oxygen, low oxygen, glycolysis, and PPP. That's it. You don't need to know anything else about biochemistry. It's that simple. Remember that oxygen is the terminal electron acceptor for mitochondria. So we come back to this. Why? What nature does not forbid will happen eventually. So why does DNA waste its time coding for these amino acids? Well, here's the photosynthesis picture. And you can see here where hydrogen from the Calvin cycle, present in their dark cycle of photosynthesis, it's favored. Deuterium is pushed out of the cell. What does this look like in a real cell, guys? So you can see it. That's it. The hydrogen's in the chloroplast, the deuterium's out here in the basis of the cell. That water becomes extremely important for plants because they make lasers too. Here's the the spectrum for chlorophyll. There's only two chlorophylls on Earth, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. I know it's hard to see in the back of the room, but the blue shaded area here is the spectrum for chlorophyll A. This is one for chlorophyll B. If you look right here, you'll notice something really bizarre. Photosynthesis only works 400 nanometer light and above. And we tend to work 240 and above, huh? Why? Why are plants doing this? Why does this exist? Well, let's go back to the NASA slide. There's our sun. Why does it have a G in it? Because our sun is called a G-class star. And G-class stars are really, really cool. When they get to mid-life, and our star is going to live about 10 billion years, according to the best physics estimates that are out there. So you know that we've been around 4.6 billion years. So our star is like 50 years old right now, okay? When a star gets to around 50 years old, you know what it does when it's in the G-class? Starts to make more UV light. It gets 10% brighter. Did you guys know the story of evolution? When photosynthesis came up, it came up about 700 million years ago. Do you know when the Cambrian explosion happened? 50 million years after photosynthesis. And you know that everything with complex life that has mitochondria occurred after that explosion. So it turns out photosynthesis was here first. And that's a big deal because it actually starts to explain why life did what it did. And if you look here again, no UVC is getting in. Only 1 to 3% of UVB is getting in. So all of a sudden, the environment, and I'm talking our cosmic environment, changed the light spectrum of the sun right around the time all complex life showed up on the planet. All complex life that had a mitochondria. And don't forget it. Here's the picture again to remind you. Just look at here. The 4 aromatic amino acids all use UVC light. So, this is the innovative talking monkey that loves paradox. Here's the question. Might we make our own UV light in the arterioles of our skin utilizing the sunlight that's present? I believe that to be true right now. How do we do it? Okay, this paper I tried to get Jerry Pollack to do for a really long time. I told him that he needed to repeat all of his water studies utilizing heavy water to see the effect of deuterium on water. He never did it. But the reason why it's important, it turns out when you change the electric topology of water, that means the surface electric charge, water changes its physics. And it turns out, we first learned about this from Robert O. Becker, because one of the things that he did in his book, The Electric Body, for those of you who don't know, he's an orthopedic surgeon that did all mammalian research and found out that during the daytime, our bodies, our cells make a DC electric current. He had no idea where it came from. But the one thing he noted is at nighttime, it went away. And it turned out that regeneration was always tied to the DC electric current in the limbs. For example, he used to cut salamanders' arms off, they would grow right back, and this DC electric current was present. The interesting thing that happened is when you change the electric topology, well, what changes the electric topology in nature? The sun has huge electric fields when the sun's shining like it is out here. At nighttime, those electric fields go away, and magnetic flux goes through the roof. So magnetism raises at nighttime. Well, it turns out that affects the water in every cell in your body. And it turns out trees, plants, animals, everything that's alive on this planet uses the DC electric current to operate, and it's functionally tied to your level of melatonin in the cell to help drive things. So, what else does electric topology do? It allows water to absorb more UV light. How do you like that? And it turns out all the blood in your body, you can see, hemoglobin is an iron porphyrin. All porphyrins absorb UV light. You see the 280 there. Did you know that the main protein in your body, in your blood, that comes to the surface of your skin when it's irradiated, is also in that UVC range? Why is that the case? Why is it that this keeps happening? Here's the punchline, guys. How much do you know about a deuterium arc lamp? Anybody? Ever seen one? Probably not. What if I was to tell you that when you put anodes and you put an electric current through deuterium, that it makes extreme, low-frequency, shortwave UV light. You know what I just said? It makes UVC light. It makes UVB light. It makes UVA light. What's the difference between deuterium and hydrogen when it's compressed by electric and magnetic fields? Deuterium, compressed, tends to make all the way down to 100 nanometer light in the UV range. So guess what? Dr. Boros casually showed you this slide, and I took this from him. This slide shows you, isn't it funny, if deuterium's really bad in our TCA cycle and a urea cycle, why the hell do we have a shit ton of it in our arteries? And look, this is only 5 parts per million below what the seawater is. Why would we keep it in our blood? Well, let's go back to that skin story. Here's the skin again. Our fat mass is down here. Take a look at the UVC light. See, it doesn't penetrate, so it's pushing at this level. UVB light pushing down on our sub-Q level. UVA light comes here and makes nitric oxide, and it vasodilates. Okay, vasodilates means more blood down here. So that means there's a pinch that occurs right in this area here. And I want you to try to visualize that. So, all these books my members have seen. In this book, you'll find out that every living cell releases extreme low-frequency UV light. In that book, you'll find out they have no idea where it comes from. Bet you some of my members now are starting to figure it out. This book, Jerry Pollack talked about his 270 nanometer light. What is innovation? Innovation is putting together thermodynamic givens given to you by nature and trying to make sense out of them. And it's a really important thing. This is your slide, Josh. Your answer is right here. Chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. I want you to take a look at carotenoids. Most of the carotenoids you guys know about is carrots, peppers, onions. In plants, they always have these things because what does it protect them from? Blue light too. Even plants have to protect themselves from blue light. So again, here's where the stuff is, down here. This is a warning to you. This was a slide from last year. Point that I want to make to you. I told you the deuterium arc lamp works with anions and a strong electric current. Take a look what's in the arterial wall. Sulfate. What else is in here? Cholesterol sulfate here. All your red blood cells filled with DHA. Yeah, by the way, blue light reduces the amount of DHA in your blood too. Full spectrum sunlight from UVB all the way through red makes sulfhydryl groups. What did I just tell you about sulfur? It's the anion that's also made in the blood where massive parts of deuterium are. Interesting, huh? Remember where that damn blood vessel is. Now I'm going to take you to New Orleans. This is how we build houses in New Orleans. And what you're about to see, we live in a swamp, so we have to put pilings in the ground, okay? And every house is like that. In fact, Matt was here last week in New Orleans and found out he wanted me to do something in the basement. I said, dude, we don't have basements. We have pilings underneath our houses to hold the foundation up. And they have to do this in certain parts of Asia. And it's really important for you to get this visual because you're never going to understand the visual that's coming on your skin until you see this occur. And you can see he's pounding this into the ground to support the structure. And it's going to push. It's exerting a force down on the ground. Now, in a different country, Thailand, they don't have those fancy machines because they're broke. So this is how they do it. They play music, and everybody jumps to the beat of the music on a cross member to put a piling in. Take a look at that. Because this is instructive. You hear how they're singing? Okay. Why do they do that? Because they know if they use the frequency or the waveform, they can use that force to generate a force in the tissue. Guess what? You do the same thing in your skin. What you're doing with UVA, UVB light, and any UVC that gets through, you're pushing down on the surface epidermis to squeeze the deuterium that's got a ton of anions in it. and it does exactly the same thing as a deuterium arc lamp. And it makes a laser, because guess what happens? In your sub-Q layer, there's fat. And to make this work, you have to bring fat up to make the laser light. And it turns out, if you look at it, you can make this laser light. You don't even need UVB light. You only need UVA light, which is what I told one of my members, Kruse from Canada. This is really good news for you guys in Vermont, because it means you don't always need UVB light to remain healthy. You just need your skin in the game. And you have to get your skin in the game. Why? Because it turns out that this laser light is what makes melatonin from tryptophan. 240 nanometer to 300 nanometer light turns it on. This is the reason nature put deuterium in your arteries and not in your TCA cycle. Remember again what NASA said. UVC light doesn't fall to the surface. What's the key? UV light in our spectrum from our sun provides the most power and energy. It means it's like those Thailand guys that you saw bouncing on the pole. And sunlight also has a natural rhythm to it. That was on Jeff's slide that I showed in the back. And that's what allows your body to continue to squeeze it as that diurnal change happens. But you do not get the effect when you have your clothes on, when you're outside eating lunch. You need to get some of your skin in the game. Now, here's one of the key parts, and we're going to talk about this glyphosate problem probably right here. Most people don't know about this, but the vessels are here. The nitric oxide vasodilates, pushes up. These two frequencies push down. These are the ranges in nanometers that this goes. Here's what most people don't know. Heating and pH favors H+ bonding in our tissues. In other words, our tissues where the TCA cycle and the urea cycle is, they get a benefit. Do you know what type of light heats your skin surface up the most? UV light. This is how nature works. This is how all the pieces fit. This effect here is called the chiral heat effect. And when you hear something chiral, do you know what chiral is? Anybody know what the only achiral amino acid is in the body? Glycine. Guess what it's made out of? Collagen. You know where glyphosate affects it? Right here. It's not in the gut. It starts right on your skin because it comes through the blood and it blocks the chiral heat effects. You know what that means? You don't get as much pinch. If you don't get as much pinch, you can't make the UV light that your amino acids need to be made to get programmed to do the things they need to do. Okay, more pictorial. The blood radiator. How does this work? You guys know blood moves really fast. I'm sure everybody's been cut on their skin, like when you're shaving or something and you get blood. Well, remember, because blood's fast moving, its temperature is lower than the tissues that get heat up. Anybody go out in the sun today and feel their skin gets really hot in the area that the UV light was on? Everybody's had that experience, don't you? But you know what you don't have an experience of? You don't know what the temperature is in your blood vessels. But guess what? Your body does, and it uses this effect to push H+ in your tissues and keep deuterium in your arteries to make UV light to run the programs that run you. That's the reason why the fat and blood vessels are in between the pinch. The strong light pushes down from above, nitric oxide pushes up from above, and guess what happens? You have something called animal photosynthesis. Everybody knows that a tree, when it has light on the leaves grow to the light. That's called phototaxis. Everybody knows that from 3rd grade. Guess what happens here? You have phototaxis in your skin, and I'm not going to get into this in this talk, but this will show you how crazy it is. Do you know that your blood vessels, your RBCs, rotate towards the light when you examine it? And there's a reason they do that, which my members will find out down the road. What was the key paper number 2? Right here. Take a look at the date. March 2018. So this is fresh off the press, guys. We're here 2.5 months later. I want you to look at number 1. When the electric charge of water is changed, what's influenced? What's on the top of the list? It's ultraviolet spectrum. I don't need Jerry Pollock anymore. I have a physics journal That's just now gave me the answer I've been looking for. I didn't know I was going to get the answer from Jeff today or yesterday, but I'm digging that too. It changes this one right here. Dr. Boros would probably be very interested in it. It changes the surface tension of water. What does that mean, guys, so you know? It means water that is not UV irradiated has a different viscosity than water elsewhere. Why is that important? What Dr. Boros just showed you a little while ago is that the water that's metabolic water, DDW, deuterium depleted water, is less viscous. In other words, it runs everywhere. It runs into the nicks and crevices of all the atoms and every protein in your body, just like the TCA cycle needs it to be. That's the reason why it's important. Again, not to be a pain in the ass, but that's where I started. This is where I went. Get through that, got here. Now you're all at the black swan mitochondriac stage. Now you're beginning to realize how one little change in the skin can lead to a complete paradigm change going forward. And we haven't even talked about the gut yet. That could be next year. Go back to this one again. This is last year's slide. You have 150 parts per million, and you have your anions here. Let's make sure you get this. Skin in the game. It's a literal and figurative use. You need to understand the science before I can make you understand how complex my science is so that you take your damn clothes off and go out when you're supposed to go out, because it's easy. All you have to do is be like the Sphinx. Now you know it's that easy. What happens? UV light pushes down on your skin, changes the physics here, and guess what else happens? The red light in sunlight makes a mirror. Now, I didn't tell any of my non-members this, but if you're interested, I wrote a Patreon blog yesterday that gives even more details because I couldn't put this all in and get it done. If you're interested in reading it, I would tell you it'll make a lot of sense after you hear this talk. Go read it, because in that, I tell you actually how to make a laser. Here, I'm just going to tell you how the body does it. The red light that penetrates deep, just so everybody knows, red light, like the light on top of me, penetrates 10 to 30 centimeters into your body. What does that mean? It gets to every single mitochondria in your body. Cytochrome 4, that controls apoptosis, has 4 red light chromophores in it. Hemoglobin has 3 red light chromophores in it. What does that do? It makes the ATPase spin faster regardless of what's happening in electron chain transport. What did I tell you the UV light does? It slows electron chain transport down, which builds apoptosis, which means you can't get cancer if you have skin in the game. So, the obesity paradox. Everybody know about that? You guys know that I'm kind of a really big fan of talking about obesity because that was my affliction. It was my wife's affliction, and we fixed it. Turns out that the obesity paradox says if your BMI is between 25 and 30, you may be a fat ass, but you're probably going to live longer than the vegan that's next to you. And I'm not kidding you. The problem is modern science can't figure out the answer. What I just told you right now figures it out, because it turns out you store all your stem cells. Those are the cells that are going to replace your bad cells in your body. So when the environment changes, your body will turn them on. Anybody want to guess how the body turns them on? With the lasers I just told you are made. So how are the lasers made? Anybody know what that is? That's called an optical resonator, okay? That's a mirror, and this is a mirror. 93% of blood is water, okay? So you make it based on that. Then you're going to see this lady, Romania Tascanova from the University of Kobe. Almost 8 years ago, in the literature, she showed that near-infrared light, that's the light the sun makes a mirror in your blood. Take a look at that. Another person reproduced her study. It really happens, folks. Okay, take a look at this. Your plasma is loaded with deuterium that raises it all up to the surface. So your blood surface comes up, gets irradiated by both of these frequencies of light. We've got everything here. So this is what happens. We're truly, what Dr. Boros said earlier, I've told people this. I'm not really a religious guy, but I believe the most accurate thing in the Bible was Genesis 1:1 through 1:5. I think God, evolution, whoever you want to believe, it is about light. The only problem is they never gave you the recipe. That's what your job is to figure out in your life. Hopefully today helped you a little bit. The key is that laser light actually builds your melatonin. The melatonin is what repairs all of your mitochondria, both on apoptosis and autophagy. What did I say earlier? The only two programs that control your mitochondrial biology. So, going back to my Western A. Price love, because you know, dentists are really smart. I gave a talk 4 years ago to the New York State Dental Society, and I showed this. Do you know that dentists were the first ones that showed that if you use laser light, it makes molecules from oxygen. I'm going to tell you what those molecules are called, free radicals. And guess what they do? They can take your dentin after, and that's the tissue below your enamel, repair it so you can fix your tooth without any dentist needed. What did Western A. Price say? Everybody he saw never had any caries. And you guys blamed it on the food, and you had no idea it was really the light. Here's the key. Nature is human resonance. You've heard a lot of people talk about how we resonate with nature. It is true. Most of you know I don't like mumbo jumbo talk. I like real stuff, real data. Technology is human dissonance. That disconnects us and makes waveforms that destroy us. I want you to get that message loud and clear. This slide is the take home, and I hope all of you can read it. In the back, I'll read it for you. This was actually made at my Mexico event. Humans are the only species bright enough to make artificial light and stupid enough to live under it. And with that, I want to again say to everybody, thanks for your attention. Appreciate the invite. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll take any questions if you have any. I will say this too. The book that Dr. Boros talked about, if you guys are interested in learning more about deuterium, because if I had more time, I would probably get into it a little bit more, but I would tell everybody this book is really cheap. It's written by the guy that brought Dr. Boros the check. It's got all his protocols in it for cancers, but I'm going to tell you, you can use them for other diseases. I would tell you to look into it. And for those of you who decide to upgrade your game, because you see I didn't talk about 5G this time around, Nick did. These are the 5G glasses that I worked with Matt to get. The difference between these glasses and the glasses that I have on, 5G is going to cause jump conduction. These glasses have metal in them. So these glasses have no metal in them. And just so you know, the way 5G works, it affects transition metals in metal. So it can actually cause your eye and your face to have problems. So I don't want anybody to go buy a pair of blue blockers that have the metal in the wing when you know that you live in a 5G city. It's probably a big take home, because if you listen to the talk last year, you know that the eye is a really big deal. You now know the skin's a big deal. So when you get serious about your life and you start protecting from blue light, do it the right way when 5G is in your area. No questions? Awesome. All right, you got a microphone that we can give everybody? No, come on up. You can't yell because I can't get you on damn video. And the Q&A is usually the best part. And I'd like everybody, if you have a question, please just come up. Don't be scared.
I'm not scared at all, but I have a big question here. How is it that the Inuit populations are some of the healthiest people and they live half the year or more in darkness? And also, why are there fat people in Florida if they get all the sun?
It's a phenomenal question, and here's the answer. When you look at this, the Inuits actually do get UVA light even at their high latitude, and I showed you that UVA light can actually make UVC light from deuterium. And that's the key that you miss. If you can make the endogenous UVC and UVB light, that means that you can make melatonin. Here's the crazier thing. Believe it or not, you can actually still get a deuterium pinch from blue light. And they tend to get blue light. Here's the other augmentation for them. The aurora borealis actually helps the Inuit. The problem became for them is when they introduced technology and the bad diet, everybody blamed it on the diet. It turned out it was really the tech advancement that really did them in. People in Florida is easy. Most of the people in Florida, I'll give you a perfect example. Everybody in this room came out of a vagina at one time. Nobody in this room right now looks like they did when they came out of the mother, including the people in Florida. So I'm going to give you an example. Me and you went to your backyard. We planted an orange tree in Florida. Your wife came over and put a tarp over it. Will we get any oranges, my friend? No. And that's what obesity is. It's a destruction in information signaling between the cells. It's kind of like arrivals and delivery coming at the same day. It's a circadian mismatch. So that's how it can happen. And that's the reason why, like, all cases of obesity are not the same. Some are worse than others. Some people are 900 pounds, other people are 250. Other people are 180 and they're 5'1". The reason this happens, it turns out this is a dynamic mechanism because of the skin. And that's one of the reasons why I knew that it couldn't just be the eye that did it. I knew there had to be another option somewhere else, but I didn't know where it would be. I assumed it would be the skin, and I told Dave Hollingback this the other night. Do you guys remember when Suzanne Summers wrote her book in 1991, and she said, one of the doctors told her if you put a pen light behind your knee that it destroyed your melatonin, and everybody laughed her and said she was batshit crazy? Turns out she was right. And the reason she was right is because we had melanopsin in the skin, and believe it or not, if it's the right type of pen light, especially an LED light, it can completely destroy your melatonin. So just think about it like this. The next time you go out to the movie with your wife, say in Ocala, Florida, at 7 p.m., and you got shorts and a t-shirt on, what are you really doing? When you know this data now, that's how it can happen. And the problem is, it can happen in a variety of different ways, but the key is you need to understand no matter where you are. But Jeff did a beautiful job in his talk because he even said something that really resonated with me. He said that the Hasda women who were obese, even though they lived on the equator, who are they? They're the ones that went and sold Fanta and Coke inside to do transactions with money with blue screens. Guess what? It took them from outside to inside. So you have everybody else around them. They weren't fat, but they were. What was it that did it? Jeff said at the end of his talk, there's something in the environment that we're not counting for. And the irony was, even in those fat ladies, their microbiome was exactly the same no matter what they did. That was a prediction that I made in my quilt, that the diet wouldn't change it. And the crazy part for all of you to realize, I said in this talk that the VDR receptor is in every enterocyte. Yet every single one of you now know that the sun doesn't get into the inside of your gut. Now you know where it comes from. The UV light comes from within. So if you don't make it because your skin's not in the game, you're going to get heavy. Anybody else?
Is it 660?
Yeah, that's 660. One of my members brought that too. I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, why did you have to go controversial on me? I'm going to tell you I'm not a fan, and it's really tied to the talk last year. And if you remember in one of the first slides, I showed the neuropsin. The neuropsin on your cornea and your skin is a UVA receptor. So most of the ophthalmologists are taught in medical school, just like every MD is taught, that UV light doesn't penetrate, the cornea and the lens. It turns out that's bullshit too. It does get through. But you don't need a lot to do it. When you put the intraocular lens in, it blocks the UVC getting in. So if you listen to what I just told you today, you need every benefit you get. So if you do have the cataract lens in, why is today's talk probably really helpful for you? Because it tells you that more skin in the game is required. The other thing that's key that I want to make sure everybody gets is when the baby comes out the mama's vagina, it's made out of 80% water, so babies are more sensitive to UV light. In other words, they need more light. As you get older, like when you're my age or above, you're only made about 60% water. What did Dr. Boros say? He said the single most important thing mitochondria do is make water. So When your eyes have a UV lens in front of it that blocks it, we need you to get more naked. And you can offset it. I got the answer for you. I'm not going to go into detail of it, but I will tell you, and talk to some of my members with the shirts on. I wrote a blog on Patreon called The Solar Callus. If you read that, you'll begin to understand exactly what you have to do. It turns out the time of the day in the beginning is important. Why is that? Because when you get red light like this on your body from the sun, 42% of sunlight is red, it improves the amount of UV light that you make. In other words, it gets your water ready for the UV load. So Matt will tell you this. He's one of the raw optics guy that works here. He's one of my members. When I go to Mexico, most of you know I'm Fitzpatrick type 1. I'm a Irish German from Northern Europe with a K haplotype. Normally, when I grew up in New York City, I would get rock lobster with blisters. Now I can stay in the sun at the 20th latitude for 8 to 12 hours a day and just get red. I mean, some of these guys have been with me. You can talk to them, but you have to learn how to do it. I would not take some of Casper the Friendly Ghost out there from Vermont and take them with me. I got to teach them how to do it because, we got to be responsible. But here's the good news. Even if you're a Fitzpatrick 1, you can train your skin to absorb this. And the cool thing is, since you guys have really good sun this year, last year was terrible, but the sun this year is good. I told you in this talk, why is this such phenomenal news for people in Vermont? This means you guys have the big benefit of 5G because you have low population density, and you just found out that UVA light is good, but you need to get your skin in the game more because you don't make a lot of UVB. And you can use UVA to make the UVC that you need. So guess what? You got to get more naked. Like when the sun rises at 5:11, come out and see me. I'm out on the deck, buck-ass naked. You got to do the same thing.
Last century, Gianna Battery, there was a scientist last century, Gianna Battery, who reversed diseases with three things: flaxseed oil, plus sulfated protein in cottage cheese, and sunlight and meditation.
Right. Well, I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you what that is. That's a recipe that is a half-truth. The real truth is in there, but you're going to blame all the other stuff and say, oh, it's all good, so I should recapitulate that. Let me just tell you something about the last century. Do you think the last century is the same as this century right now? Did they have any Microsoft, Google, 5G, 4G, 3G, 2G? No. You know when we got it? 1940. That's when the radar came because of the Japs. What happened in the past is not your environment anymore, sweetheart. And you have to stop that. This is the reason why I've been so, how do you say, pedal to the metal about Western A. Price, because I honestly believe what he did was amazing, but I think the modern humans that are part of his foundation completely have missed the boat on why he found what he found. And everybody he saw, they had skin in the game. And now that we know this is new information. Look, this is the mark of an educated mind. When you can take something you really don't believe, examine the data for yourself and say, you know what? This is a game changer. This is something we really missed. Now that we know it, you have to realize what that collateral damage means. What it means for us, because now we're silly talking monkeys inside all the time. 90% of the light that we live under, guys, is blue. And it's got no infrared. I didn't tell you in the talk, what is nature's antidote to the blue that I showed you? It's the red. It's the 42% of red. When the sun rises to the sunset, there's always red light present. And that keeps a cap on the toxicity of blue. That's the reason why the sun can't be toxic. That's the reason why you can argue with the dermatologist and the ophthalmologist all day long, because you know what the problem is? They're not mitochondriacs. Most of the studies that got them believing that UV light was bad was done utilizing not one light that made one version of UV. UV light is never present in the environment with just UV alone. It's always present with the other parts of the spectrum. And remember, there's 7 colors. For the older people in the group like me, who like Pink Floyd, just think about the album cover. You'll get it. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If you would have talked to me last year and asked me that question, I would have said no. This year, I got to tell you, yeah. And the reason why is because melanopsin being where it is, just realize now. Now I know it's in the skin, the sub-Q fat, and your blood vessels. It's in all three. So remember what red light does. It penetrates 10 to 30 centimeters. Your skin needs that. So just for argument's sake, if there's any ladies in the room that have breast cancer or breast cancer in their family, this is strong, strong information you need to get out. I told you guys last year, my wife has got breast cancer in her family. You ask her, she doesn't go get mammograms. She doesn't do that anymore. She does what nature provides us to do. That's the reason why Albert Schweitzer and Weston A. Price found there was hardly any cancers in people that lived outdoors. And if you go read Schweitzer's papers from the early 1900s, it is stunning, the observations that he made. And if you read John Ott's book called Health and Light, this is the most stunning realization. John Ott talked to Albert Schweitzer's daughter. And do you know who they found cancer in the place where Jeff studies people? The natives that were given sunglasses. The incidence of cancer went through the roof because it goes back to the gentleman's question in the beginning. If you put a tarp over something that's a photovoltaic battery, chronically, it's going to change optical signaling. And one of the things you heard from Zach that I'm totally on board with, we do have optical cables in our gut and our eye. The problem that I don't think they realize, the microbiome guys go, all of those cables are made by DHA. So the blue light destroys those cables. You don't need food to do it. All you need is blue light on your skin. So let me ask you a question. Most of the people in this room are probably not eating grains anyway. So if you're not eating this stuff and you're doing an elimination diet and you still got the problem, what does that tell you? That ain't the answer.
So cold and dark here half the year. So what do we do? Go on vacation?
Well, here's the good news. I tell my members this because, you know, obviously the answer is yes. But I'm gonna give you a nature story, but I'm going to answer you first. The nature story I think you'll like. The latest research shows that if you get 4 to 7 days at a decent latitude, so I tell my people, try to get to Playa del Carmen or Cancun. For you guys, it's easy too. It's a straight shot. But you could actually go to Pensacola, you know, on a southwest plane and get there. All you need is 4 to 7 days. You get a 6-week pop. That's a good thing. Now, here's the cool story. Everybody familiar with wildebeest and crocodiles? You know that wildebeest migrate. You know how they know to migrate? This goes back to Dr. Boros' story. They eat grass, and there's only 2 seasons on the equator. It's wet and dry, like Jeff said. The grass, at certain times, has more deuterium in it. The deuterium has double the atomic weight. That gets caught in the enterocytes of the gut, causes it to swell. That's the signal that the animals use. They need to go north to where the grass is. So what do they have to cross? The Nile River, where the 20-foot crocodiles are. This is how nature works, okay? From a little thing changing the grass. Remember, all grass on this planet is a C3 photosynthetic plant. What was the first year that I came here to talk about? Photosynthesis. Do you understand how tied each one of my talks are to the other? They're incredible. And I'm telling you right now, the crocodile story, these animals will risk their life and limb to get to grass that's deuterium depleted. And that's the stimulus they get in their enterocytes. And just so you know, the thing that I said, I didn't say this to piss anybody off in the room. I want you to know that your enterocytes really don't matter what goes on inside it if the circadian mechanism is intact. Why? Because you replace them every 48 hours. But guess what? Most of the people in this room don't. And you know how you can tell that you don't? I'll give you 2 clinical ways you can tell. If your Bristol stool score is not a 4, that's a strike against you. What's the next one? It's called the gastrocolic reflex. This one's more accurate. When you eat something in the first 30 minutes of light, you're supposed to take a dump. If you don't do that, you're not regular, you have a circadian mismatch from blue light. Oh, all of a sudden everybody's going, shit. But listen, this is the cool thing about becoming a mitochondriac, because remember the slide that I showed you? My complexity and the simplicity. This is the reason why mitochondriacs have to be okay with difficult science, because little details can completely change the way you look at the problem. And you know why it's important for me to come to an audience that half of them love me and half of them hate me? I don't care what you think about me. I just want you to know there's a deeper truth out there tied to electrons, protons, and light, and I want you to know when you're getting sold a bunch of bullshit. Why? Because I said this from the back of the room, and I don't know where the lady is from Atlanta. There she is. I said this when Nick was talking, and I talked to her later, and I can't stress this enough to you. The data coming out right now shows randomized controlled clinical trials are worthless, but that's how science is done. And the reason why is because when you understand that mitochondria completely change the way your surfaces control biochemistry, everything is an N=1 game. So you have to be good enough for you. Don't wait for the FCC, the FDA, Western A. Price, whoever, your doctor even. You know what? You are the CEO of you, and you need to get that message. The only way you're going to get it, to know how incredibly important it is you got to let me hurt your head with a little science every so often to show you something that all of you can go fact check. Why is it? Do you think that nature makes mistakes? Every aromatic amino acid and water absorbs in the UVC range. And yeah, I'm still mad at you guys. Nobody asked a question. Because when you use UVC light in my operating room, you know what we use it for in surgery? To kill all the bacteria. So I want you guys to hear what you heard. You heard from 2 researchers in this conference about bacteria on women's breasts. Those bacteria are killed by the light that I want you in. Shoot.
I want to ask you a question. I see more mothers putting sunglasses on young children.
How about putting iPads in front of them? That's even worse. But you're right. I mean, listen, I said this on a podcast probably 2 or 3 years ago. I'm sure some of you heard it, but I'll repeat it. My opinion now, and this is now elevated, and I said this before the melanopsin paper came out. I said if you give your kid an iPad, an iPhone, or put sunglasses or sunblock on it, it's akin to taking your kid into Walmart and kicking the shit out of them in front of everybody. But you know what? The problem is you laugh, and you notice I didn't laugh. The reason why? I'm dead serious about it. And the problem is when people don't know the science, when people are not willing to come to a conference like this and listen to something that challenges your bias and your dogma, that's a problem. But guess what? When you have that information, it's then incumbent upon you is taking care of your dopamine network. I tell all my members, the only people that I want you to get right initially is you. Then guess what? The person you sleep with and the kids that you take care of, they're going to look at you and they're going to go, Mom, if Mom's doing this, I'm doing it. That's the reason why I love women. Women are way better than guys, because guys, oh, I'm not doing that, you know. But women do it. And when women do it, the whole family changes. And when the whole family changes, then guess what happens? You girls are really good at networking. Like, you still do networking like you're supposed to, not like the millennials do on Facebook. You actually go out to dinner, you talk, and then some of your girlfriends may say, oh, you're batshit crazy, but they still like you. And guess what? After a period of time, you keep doing it, and guess what? You start looking different. And I don't know if you were here last year, but this is the reason why I'm incredibly proud of my wife.
We love Sandy.
I ruined my kids, both of them. I fixed my son, didn't fix my daughter yet. My wife is the key to fixing my daughter. She's on her way. She sent me a picture, or she sent my wife a picture. This weekend when we're up here, she's at the beach, and she showed us a picture that made us proud. She had skin in the game, and her boyfriend was white and he's a star defensive end. And I'm like, this is good when Mom and Dad are not home, and she's telling us she got the message. And I'm going to tell you, 7, 8, 9 years ago, when my wife thought like your friends are that I'm batshit crazy, then my wife changed. And that was the story last year. Now, the next big chapter in my life is to see my daughter change. There's a chance, believe it or not, and I've told some of my members this, my daughter has changed so much, she told my wife that she may want to do what I do. She may be the person teaching at this conference 20 years from now. And that makes me happy. Behind you. You had a question?
Yes, in terms of
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, dude. I love this. Chris is sitting in the front row. You need to hook up with him. Chris is one of my members that came to this event last year, and I scolded him about this topic, so I'm so glad you brought this up. Just so you know, there's a metabolic switch in your eye. When the eye senses through neuropsin that UV light's no present, it knows blue and red is. That's when your body shifts the program, and it uses endothelial nitric oxide synthetase. Guess what? You can still make light from that utilizing blue, but guess what has to change? The environmental temperature has to be low. That's how the Inuits did what they did. It goes back to the gentleman's question back there, because the cold actually changes the program so you can make UVC light from blue light when there's no UV light sensed and temperature is low, which is the basis of my cold thermogenesis 6 blog.
So kind of an add-on to that,
Just spit it out, dude.
no, I was just thinking, okay,
So why don't you feel comfortable tell everybody your story about what happened? Come on, come up here. This is Chris. Chris is from Ottawa. Tell them what happened last year.
well, the question just kind of came back, so can I first ask that? Okay, so how he was saying how CT can help us, and then you're saying we can even use blue light because of the effect of the temperature. Now,
Blue light from the sun.
right, well, of course, yeah.
Just want to make sure.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So, up in Canada, it could be, minus 30 sometimes. Tell me about skin in the game then. Like, should we get our asses out there? Because I'll do it.
Yeah, I would tell you, but here's the thing. The most important time to do it is going to be in the morning. So you don't have to do it all the time, and you only have to go out for infrequent times. And here's the crazy part. This is important. I'm glad you brought this up. The more you do in the summer to build your redox up, the less you need to do in the winter. That's the reason why the Inuits did what they did. And guess what? The other benefit the Inuits got, they always grounded. We never do. Right. So you have to remember, grounding is a big effect with this. So you want to add that. But I would tell you, you don't have to do as much if your redox potential is good. And just so you guys know, I don't know if you really know what redox is, but it's made out by NAD positive, NADPH, and glutathione levels. It's designed to be negative 400 millivolts. And that's the electrical difference between cytochrome 1 and cytochrome, I should say, the oxygen molecule. Here's the part that I didn't tell you in the talk, but my members heard it in the Patreon blog. Anybody want to know that crazy catabolism of tryptophan? What does it form, Chris?
NAD positive.
So guess what? When NAD positive is bad, like if you go read the low-carb paleo forums that are talking about all this bullshit, guess what they don't know? You can make NAD positive without paying for any special supplement if you get your skin in the game.
And drink Malbec, right?
Malbec helps too, but you have to read the blog for that.
Yeah.
All right, tell them your story about what happened last year here.
Yeah, so...
This is at this event last year.
Yeah, so basically, I don't know, I guess a little bit of a background is... well, I guess I could say I was a food guru, an exercise guru. I became obsessed with my body image and whatnot. So kind of created a bad habit. I'd be exercising like a madman in a blue lit gym, and then restricting calories. I discovered intermittent fasting, which actually worked pretty well. The problem is I was hungry all the time, so I was just ignoring that hunger, basically. And then I started to have some issues with hormones, like the hormone panel just kind of came crashing down. So
testosterone. The reason he came here,
yeah.
Just spit it out. His T was low, he came here. Dude, I need to do something. I need to do the juice. I need to do this. I need to do that. So what happened? We're standing outside the farm at sunrise in our underwear.
Yeah.
And I said to him, Chris, you live in Ottawa. What was your come to Jesus moment when I said it? Cold actually changes the way your receptors work. So guess what? You don't need a testosterone at 800. Look at this guy. He's got plenty of muscle. His wife not complaining. No he's got good bone density. So you know what the key is? People don't realize as the temperature changes, going to what we just said before, and he's running on endothelial nitric oxide synthetase and not UV light, your receptors get more sensitive, so your hormone panels go low, and you get no effects from it.
Yeah.
Listen. Nature has figured out how it works in cold and hot, guys.
It's true, and basically, so basically what I'll tell you is I started following Jack, and I started doing the CT. So I was taking cold showers, cold baths, getting out in the snow. I mean, for a guy who jumped in the snow last year in my bathing suit, the same bathing suit here, and just rolled around like a dog, right? You know, dogs, they have the intuition, they know, you know, what helps them. So yeah, I just kind of learned to be more instinctive. And the cool thing is, a switch just went off because, you know, I went from having low T in a warm adapted state to having low T in a cold adapted state. And the cool thing is, it didn't matter, right? It didn't matter at all.
That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key that I want you guys to understand, that it can work. And that's also the reason why this story is cool, is because what Jeff told you guys from up here yesterday. You know, I talked to so many people in my booth, they're like, I can't believe he drank water with baboon shit in it. And I'm like, guys, when you're in the equator, you could put shit on a shingle and eat it and get away with it. And I'm not kidding you. That's the way nature built us. And remember, I didn't talk about the evolution of humans. That's our cradle. That's where we come from. So most of us with coupled haplotypes, that's L0, these people, that's the reason why they come to the Boston Marathon and kill it. But somebody told me this earlier, because I'm not from up here. Do you know when all the Kenyans come up here the week before? They come a week early because they get sick as soon as they get here. How do you like that? And anybody know where Nairobi, Kenya is? 1 degree latitude north, 8,000 feet up in the air. Remember, every time you go up 1,000 feet, you get more UV light. That's the reason why they're black as the ace of spades, to protect themselves, because the melanin allows them to absorb more UV light. The dark skin also protects the folate in their dermal place so they can have babies, because you need folate. So that's the reason why American doctors tell women that are blue light toxic to take methylfolate so they can still have babies. Shoot, thanks, dude.
Yeah, no problem.
This is the Atlanta lady for anybody that wants to know.
They're out in the sun quite a bit. They do soccer, outdoor sports. So I'm interested about the sunblock piece because I fully admit I put sunblock.
Well, don't worry about it. Listen, just remember, wounds create wisdom, okay? So you're learning something. You came here because your mother is awesome. Your mother dragged you back home. This is good, I think, because you learned something about this, and you're going to potentially help your kids. But I'm telling you, the solar callus block for you is important. You need your kids and you in a lot of red light. So that means, I'll give you, for Atlanta, since I know your latitude, your key time is going to be about 6, maybe 5:30 a.m. I don't know exactly when the sun comes up right now because it's the steepest change, but I'm going to say 5:45 to about 8 a.m. That's the key time for all of you. Then in the afternoon, it's going to be probably after 4:30. Why? Because the next month you go home, it's going to stay light out till 9 o'clock. You know, we don't have that yet down south. These guys, they're going to have it really soon because this is the month it changes the most. You know, the closer you get to the equator, and this is the point that I wanted to really keep hammering home with Jeff, because he's doing research that it's the last bastion of research that's going to show you guys that I'm right, that the environment drives this whole thing, because these are as wild humans as we're going to get in an equatorial environment. These people, redoxes are through the roof. That's why they can smoke weed. They can do all the crazy shit they do and get away with it. And it's also the reason why people like but Kurt Cobain and Bennington, all the music guys are using drugs because they live a blue shifted light at night. Why do you think Michael Jackson had vitiligo now? Why do you think he really died? It wasn't the stupid doctor that gave him the Diprovan. That was dumb. But why couldn't he sleep? You guys know the answer. He couldn't make any melatonin. Why did he get vitiligo? His body turned the skin white to get UV light.
Okay, so how do I keep them from getting that to a crisp?
I just told you. Morning and afternoon. You got to do that for about 6 weeks, and then guess what happens? Then you put them out. I don't know what their skin type is, but I'm going to assume it's like yours. All right, so this is the simple thing. Then in the midday, I'm going to tell you between 10 and 2, no sunscreen. Get them the Kaniki bathing suit. That's the one that allows everything to go through. You can ask me afterwards. I'll tell you how to get it. They also have Cool Tan in the States. Those are bathing suits that you can be naked without being naked. And all they need then is probably 20 to 30 minutes for the summer. But what you need to do as the summer goes on, you're going to start to notice they don't get. And don't be afraid of pink. Remember the slide that I showed you up here about histidine? Histidine is what makes you pink. It makes your skin erythematous. I cover that big time in the Solar Callus blog. And sunburns, this is going to shock you. They also don't matter. If I was going to get melanoma, I should already have it, because I was the kid that had blisters on his shoulder, you know, out at the beach. You couldn't get me off of the beach. But I wasn't doing it right, because I would be a white boy in New York. We'd have a summer in New York because my grandparents had a house on the beach, and I'd go and I'd get beet red because I never got out in the morning, ever got out in the morning. I told the story last year. When I came here, when I was 40 years old, if I saw 25 sunrises in my entire life, that was a lot because of my job, because of my training. Mom.
Yes. All right, so I'm divorced from the sun for many years because as a child, I didn't use sunscreen. I was out in the sun constantly. But then I ended up with skin cancer
Where?
on my shoulder,
Okay.
on my face,
Okay.
and that was not enough. So,
And did you get your vitamin D level drawn at that time?
well, I take high levels of vitamin D.
Think about what you just said. I'm going to tell you, here's the key. This is what the dermatologist, the dirty little secret they don't want you to know. Every single paper written on the incidence of melanoma, it's always more prominent in non-skin exposed areas and also when the vitamin D level is low. What does everybody in this room already know? Vitamin D can only be made by UV light. So how can the sun be toxic? I can tell you this. The answer is you are blue light toxic. Blue light causes melanogenesis. It stimulates your skin to get darker. That's where a melanoma comes from. And you can do a Google search and you'll see papers in the dermatology literature. Does anybody know what the fastest growing melanoma is on the planet right now? Where it is located? In the eye. And guess what? What did I just say to the lady before? Ophthalmologists and dermatologists are taught in medical school like it was. No UV light gets through the eye. Explain. How do you, if you believe that the sun caused your cancer, how do you get eye melanoma if none gets through? Turns out blue does. And you got to remember, you're not that old. You were around with black and white TV. You know what black and white TV was when you watched it? It's a cathode ray. Do you remember in the 1960s when it got pulled off? Why did it get pulled off? Because it made x-rays if you sat within 10 feet of it. What do you think about that? And you know that you watched some TV, girl. And just remember something else. Remember I showed you about the incandescence? Because you lived most of your life with incandescence. 40% melatonin blockage. Okay? When was the light bulb invented? 1874. You ain't that old. That means that you lived a life that's not like Jeff Sky's. I haven't seen any pictures from your daughter of you carrying a spear and a loincloth.
So would you suggest that?
I'm not suggesting, sweetheart. I'm demanding. See, I can't demand you because you're not a mitochondriac. You're not one of my misfits. And you'll only become one of my misfits when you start to realize just how right this science is. And see, it goes back to that original slide that I showed you. When you read Jack's stuff on the internet, it makes your head explode. It's so complex. But what did I show you on that circle over there? What's the answer? It's really easy. How apt are you to do something that is easy as the Sphinx if you don't really understand the reason why you're doing it? Because right now, I can feel from you already, via a molecular resonance phenomenon, you're emitting extreme low frequency UV light, and I'm sensing it. Guys, I'm actually not kidding. I'm dead serious about this. That's actually how we communicate. That's why women and men have sex. That's why we hold hands. That's why we kiss. We're sampling each other's light. When you look at somebody through their face, your face emits more extreme low frequency UV light than just about anything on your body. Your tongue the most, fingertips and toes. So you girls that like nail polish and shit like that, bad idea. I'm not kidding you. And that's in the books that I showed you. You read this, you'll understand. And the reason why you develop a connection with somebody, the reason why I really like you two is because of what we talked about. We got to have a one-to-one conversation. I got to sample your daughter. She got to sample me. You got to sample me too. And right now, both of you are still skeptics, and I want you to be that way. But do you know what I want? If I said anything that made you curious, then I did my job. Because now it's on you. See, I came here to do something. Mission accomplished. I said this last year, I'm going to say it again. I know that I come every year to any event, and I'm brought there because of quantum entanglement. In other words, to find somebody who really needs to know what I know. And I know. Every year it happens. And some years I get more than just one. But I'm telling you, it's a big deal. And that's the reason why the people around you, the people that you care about, if they're energy vampires, I don't care if you're married to them or they're your family members. And you can ask my wife. I like my friends better than I like my family. The reason why? I get to pick my friends. I got stuck with them. It's the truth. Listen, the one thing you're going to find out about a mitochondria when you get there, your mouth doesn't become a bakery. I think most of you have figured that out about me, but the reason I'm like that is because I have such a low tolerance for bullshit. And the reason why, for the first 40 years of my life to become a neurosurgeon, I was fed nothing but bullshit. That's the reason why I'm kind of still mad at myself, because I know I'm smart, but I wasn't smart enough to figure this out until I was 40, until I got to be a fat bastard and had no idea that my job caused it. And I allowed it to happen. And notice, I don't blame anybody else. That's why I told you yesterday when we talked, it's an N=1 game. And I'm telling you this again. Don't worry about your kids. I want you to fix you when you get to Atlanta. Because when we fix you, your little chickadees will be following right behind you. No problem.
Back to the right times to get UVA exposure. How do we know which latitude is right?
That's a great question. So this is something I do for my members. Every so often when I'm not busy with work, I'll offer educational consults. So how do I figure this out? First thing I want to know, and we did this today. If you guys had been by my booth, you would have seen me do it with a couple from Pennsylvania and their son, who I didn't call out in this lecture, but I should have. But we'll talk about them now. I want to know about a person's haplotype. I want to know if they're driven by light or cold or both. So how do I figure that out? There's some very key SNPs that I'll usually tell you about after you get your Ancestry or your 23andMe. Then when I figure that out, then I want to know everything I can possibly know about your mother, and then everything I can possibly know about your grandmother. Why is that the case? Doug Wallace is the main researcher who described 30 years ago that we only inherit our mitochondrial DNA from mom. So that's part of the reason why I'm all about ladies, because we get our engines from our mothers. So dad does affect those SNPs. So you could be mismatched. Like for example, we have a member, lives in Norway, he's Chilean, so he lives at the 59th latitude and he's got dark skin. So I called him Alex the Chimera, because that's really what he is. He's like a cactus that lives in the tundra. Makes no sense at all, but he now knows that. And what I want to know about you, are you mismatched for the current environment you are? And why is this kind of important to tie to the other talks that you've heard here? Jeff's talk, guys, I'm going to keep saying it. Jeff showed you these are L0 people who are designed to live in that environment, and they overcome most things that all of you your head would explode. In fact, my videographer who's here, Ben, he got hired to go to Uganda. He has the most unbelievable story. I did a webinar for my members about this. He saw a little black kid in Uganda who looked like Michael Jackson with a soccer ball. His last day that he was there, he found out the kid had malaria and typhoid fever. If any of your kids had malaria and typhoid fever in Vermont, they would be in the ICU and they'd probably be bringing the priest to give him last rites. And this kid was running around like he was Michael Jordan. Guess what? Ben said, he goes, yeah, Jack, he had no shoes on, like a loincloth and a soccer ball that was beat up, and he played all day long. We don't believe this stuff. You know why? Because nobody in Vermont does this shit. And that's the truth. Nobody does it anywhere. You got to remember, technology is created indoor, silly, talking, ignorant monkeys. Okay? Our frontal lobes are now more primate-like than human-like. And you know what's in our frontal lobes? Dopamine. That goes back to that tyrosine aromatic amino acid. So the more you do wrong, the lower your dopamine level goes. Does anybody know what that effect is called when you have low dopamine? It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. You know what that means? You are not aware of what you don't know. And that's the reason why everybody at this conference really believes that food matters. And guess what? When I came here 3 years ago and Dave said to me, we'd really like you to come, I said to him twice, are you sure? And I have to give him credit. I have a lot of respect for him. I have a lot of respect for his wife. I have tons of respect for Tree. Because you know what? They stuck their neck out because Dave, as one of my members, has seen that there is a missing piece. And you know what? He's a good dude. He wants the people in the Weston A. Price Foundation in Vermont to do well. He cares about his community. And for me, that's my kind of misfit. You know why? My goal is when I teach my mitochondriacs everything that they need to know, I only have one task for them. I want them to be like a candle and light other candles up. Because when you share your light with somebody else, it doesn't diminish your flame. And that's how we're going to get better. And if you remember why I'm tying this circle up, remember what I said to you. Forget the FCC. Forget all the bullshit, the grassroots stuff. It starts with you, sweetheart. You're the N equals 1. When you protect your cells and you got it on lockdown, that's when you were worried about the chickadees. That's when you worry about your family. That's when you worry about your husband. Trust me, your husband will start paying attention. When you get optimal, he's going to go, is the pool guy coming a lot? I'm not kidding you. It actually works. Question?
There's this big disconnect for me between all of the stuff that I'm learning from you and that I could learn from you online. How do we live in this I wouldn't be here if there wasn't all this online stuff.
Well, it's simple. Once you know what you need to do, then you do what you need to do. I mean, listen, when you were in 3rd grade and you didn't know something, what'd you do? You went to the library. So you came to this conference, you learned something. So when you fill out the suggestion sheets, and if he wants me to come back next year and talk about the gut, just all of you do me one favor, because I said this the first year, let's do it outside. Okay? Because guess what? Now, I know Tree is going to kill me right now for saying this, but here's the thing. Once you understand the message, it's not that hard to do. And here's the key thing. I didn't tell you that you need to do this 100% of the time. Remember what I told Chris? You have an amazing redundancy in you. Why? Every cell in you has about, on average, it's not accurate through all tissues, about 3,600 mitochondria. Red blood cells are the only cell in your body that don't have any. Why? Because they carry the light from the skin to the rest of your body to give it information. And what Dr. Boros said, and this is really important, most of you have always heard that mitochondria are the energy powerhouse because they make ATP. He said something radical that I love. Mitochondria are about making deuterium-depleted water. What's deuterium-depleted water? It is the software package that allows the other software package from nature called light to program the hardware that's your cell. See, you guys have been focusing on the hardware way too long because you all got a software problem. And you're worried about a little of this and a little of that. Think about how much stupid shit you've done in your life. Think about it. Remember Pareto's principle? If you get 80% of it right, I'm just going to tell you, all you need to do is eat a seasonal diet right now, get your ass in the sun, you just met your 80% quality. That's it. And you know what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to realize that many of the things I teach people go against society and civilization's USB drive to put in your head, just like you said. Well, you don't have to do it that way. I mean, I wish one of my members was here. Her name's Lily Antic. She's a dentist from Mallorca. You know what she does? Every time I post a blog, she prints it out and goes to the beach and reads it. I'm not kidding you. Several of these guys here, I guarantee you, they do it. But you just sat there and said, well, how am I supposed to do this? Think. Do you know what I really do for people? Not only did I teach them stuff they didn't know, but I told somebody this last night, because we did a podcast in my house that I'm staying here with all my members last night. And I told them in that podcast that what I fundamentally do is I am teaching you to rethink your truth. And you don't realize the way you think about things is really what's blocking you from understanding the beauty in what Western A. Price found. It really is a lot simpler than you want to know. And the thing is, if you want to crucify me for that message, I'm fine with it. But just remember something. Everything I told you today doesn't cost you a freaking penny. Just remember that. You don't have to come to my online store and buy a damn thing. And if you take a supplement, you're a moron. How do you like that? And I'm not kidding you. You take anything that your cell's designed to make, you basically uncouple the system. If you don't believe me, because you know I like going back to nature to give you an example. Here's a perfect example. Yellowstone Park, they took the wolves out 20 years ago because they tried to protect the deer. Guess what happened? The deer went extinct too. So what did they have to do? They put the wolf and the deer back in. Now the buffalo are going crazy, the deer are going crazy. Do you know why? Nature works by coupled cycles. Anything you do to the prey side affects the predator side. So when you take oral glutathione, you know what you just did? You reduce the amount of endogenous glutathione that you need to make your redox potential come up. You just made a stupid move. And guess what? Dave Asprey is banking on you continuing to do that. You know why? The only person worse than a supplement maker is the idiot that confirms the purchase. I don't put the blame at Dave. You know why? That's what a predator does. You're the prey animal. It's your job to know where the lions are. It's not his job to tell you. But people don't think like I do. Why? Because they're not mitochondriacs. That's the reason I don't have a problem with bullshit. Because to me, bullshit sometimes is going to help illuminate a low dopamine mind that's afflicted by the Dunning-Kruger effect, and you're going to begin to realize, you know what? I don't have to do what everybody else is doing. When you start getting that mindset, you can say, you know, I could print Jack's blogs out and go to the beach and read it. You know, I could tell my husband, if he doesn't want to go to Mexico with me, I'm going without him. I'll take my girlfriends. Look, there's always a way. If you got a will, once you know the simplicity of the answer, it shouldn't be that hard. If you make excuses, I'm just going to tell you, think about tyrosine. That's the reason it happens. You need to insert the light right here, and your dopamine level will improve. Vermont 2017. Anybody else? Shoot. Oh, this is Nathan Walls. He's one of my mitochondriacs. Mm-hmm. Why do we want to get sun on our genitals? 42% of that red light needs to get in there. Does anybody really know why men's gonads are outside their body? Because they can't be, right, exactly. They have to be cooler. You want to know why? Do you know that melatonin works better when it's 4 degrees cooler? So guess what? Guys need their balls filled with melatonin and red light. They don't need too much of the testosterone because the UV light during the day will chill it out. So yes, guys, the reason why prostate cancer is so high in black men is because they never get their junk out in the sun. It's always covered. Why are ladies getting breast cancer? For those of you who don't know, #1 risk factor, according to the WHO, is not all the stuff that you heard earlier today. It's low vitamin D status. How do you make vitamin D? The sun. You don't make vitamin D from food. There's only 2 natural foods that have vitamin D. Why did nature do that? Things that make you go, she don't make mistakes, just silly talking ignorant monkeys do. Good question, Nathan.
So you have to wear glasses and so the red glasses.
Here you no, this is just for inside, but when you got to see, look, this is what I do. Put them on my nose. I'm getting the sunlight. When I need to see, I go like that.
So are those, there's those?
These are prescriptions.
So, okay, so tell me what I do. If I wanted to.
Well, how can I tell you what to do? I don't know shit about you. I mean, come on. That's like saying, hey, fix my car, but I left it in the garage at home. I mean, I can't do that. There's an example of disordered thinking.
So I'm going to go to, when I go with glasses,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to tell them I want red or
Go talk to Matt. He's got his glasses right out there. They're not prescription, but you know what he can do? He can actually probably sell you the frame if you want to go have them tinted. I don't know if he's still offering the prescription value to you, but I'll tell you right now, I have about 9 or 10 blue blocking glasses. The ones for the 5G that I showed you guys earlier, they don't have the metal in it. I would tell anybody, if you're going to buy glasses now, probably in Vermont, you guys are okay to maybe go another year, year and a half. But if you, since we're in New England, if you guys, anybody lives in Boston or is within 70 miles of Boston, got some bad news for you. It's been 5G now for 18 months. So you need the new version of the glasses because you want to protect your eye clock. I would tell you, you can go to other people to do it. Blue Tech lenses have it, but you have to get a special tint. And I'm telling you, Matt's pretty cool. Even if you don't buy his stuff, if you tell him he's knowledgeable about it, why did he start this company? For those of you who don't know, if you want to see how cool being a mitochondriac is, me and my wife 2 years ago had our member event, and Matt is broke. He's at the time 16 years old. He's from Philadelphia. Him and Brian, they both wanted to be doctors. I cured one of them of that disease quick. The other one is still afflicted with it. But the key thing is, Matt came to his mom and dad gave him a plane ticket and like $100 for a week. And they're staying in a Roach motel for like $5 a night. And we're staying in a really nice resort. And we went 2 days early before all the members came. So Matt and Brian said, we're going to scope the beach out to see if we can find them. So he did. He sat down with me and he got, I don't know, an 8-hour consult. I told him everything that you guys are hearing now, and he started assimilating, he started understanding it. He got the shit together with the eye, and he's like, I need to do something about this eye thing. Because you know what he said to me and my wife? He wasn't worried about him falling apart. And his story is kind of interesting too. He was concerned that all the kids that he was in school with were getting sick. So he wanted to do something, help the world. I cured him of that disease too. I said, Matt, you need to fix you. So what did he do? He fixed him. Then what did he do? When his dopamine level came up, he said, you know what? I'm going to build these glasses that block all the blue and the green. See, he had the early inside what to block. He knew exactly where to go with it. Just like he knew not to use metal frames in the glasses as of the last biohack we did. So the key is, all you need to do is make sure you have the glasses. Now where the big problem is, most of you ladies are probably happy to hear close at night. Most of your husbands are going to be like, what do you mean we got to keep the lights off? Well, I'm sorry, that's the way it's got to be. You know, the melanopsin's on your skin. The key thing is the husband's going to be fine when the wife's naked when he comes home. So it works out. You just have to realize, just do the way nature wants you to do it, and you should be good. Shoot.
My daughter was diagnosed with lipedema. She's 27, and she recently moved to Florida. Did that help her?
Absolutely. And there's no question about it. That is absolutely a disease tied to low redox. The key thing that you have to tell her, she's going to need her thorax, her chest wide open, and her arms. The reason for that is you want that thoracic duct to work. That's where the lymph system flows through. So a lot of irradiation in this area, especially with red light, is going to help her the most. Shoot.
So I have two kids that are in middle school, one's going to the high school. They're very screen oriented. You know, everything that we want.
I agree. It's a horrible situation.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. But what would you recommend other than, you know, maybe the glasses? You have a
You're not going to like my answer. But guess what? You do have one of my members here that I will tell you is an absolute stud. Her name is Karen Spires. She has 2 kids, pulled them out of school for the same concerns you did. She goes, I can't, now that she knows the science, see, I polluted her mind. Now she knows what the school's doing to her kids, and she said, I can't accept this. So now she homeschools them. Now, the homeschooling thing's a big deal, not only for the blue light, but it's also a big deal for the vaccine problem. And believe it or not, the vaccine problem, guys, is also tied to the blue light. That's a discussion for another time. But I think the only way to be safe these days, because now schools who have no money, they're now letting people put 5G antennas on the school. So you have to realize that these kids are being irradiated from the time in. And what I didn't tell you, remember I told you about the opsin on, all our opsins are loose covalent bonds. Blue light not only knocks them off, but 5G is really going to knock them off. And that's the reason why, because the power density and the topology, how it changed the electric signal on our skin is unbelievable. Actually, that's how 5G works. It affects the surface topology of things. So that concern, when I stood up here in 2016 and admonished Magda, I knew that my story was going to change when 5G comes live. Because I've always said blue light is the worst non-native EMF that we affect, because I believed what I told you today. Now I'm telling you, in most of your communities, when it goes 5G, that's going to trump even blue light. Why? Because it's going to knock the vitamin A off the melanopsin even easier because it's stronger. And that decreases the amount of UV light the kids can absorb. So that means we could physically take your kid after being irradiated for a whole school year, put them naked on the equator, do everything right, and their vitamin D still wouldn't move because their hydrogen bonding network is destroyed. That's the reason why Dr. Boros' talk was really important, because you know what? He tried to tell all of you, and I don't think most of you are biochemists, you didn't get the seriousness of what he said. Your mitochondria make the water that makes you human. It's the thing that allows you to transfer information from the earth via the Schumann resonance and the sun. That's how incredibly important it is. And the thing is, if you keep listening to food gurus, they keep talking about esoteric stuff that doesn't matter. If you keep directing your focus to things that don't matter, what's going to happen, your kids are going to grow up at 20, 25, 30 years old. The opiate crisis should be no shock to anybody anymore. You make that chemical through your eye called POMC. You can't do that in a blue light environment, and you certainly are not going to be able to do it in 5G. It's a huge issue. And listen, I said this to my members at the member event last night, that if me and my wife had a young one now, I got to be honest with you, dude, it's probably one of the we probably get divorced over it. Because what I know, and I know she wouldn't want to homeschool her, but because she doesn't understand the science as well, I'm trying to explain it to you. You know, she's kind of like you guys. She's like, look, just tell me. Now she listens to me, but you know, the person that never listens to you is the person you're sleeping with. They never do. It's the truth. We all know it. The thing is, it's not something that you need to understand. When it comes to your kids, look, I'm okay if you and your wife want to kill yourself. I'm perfectly okay with that. But listen, when it's a 5, 6, 7, 10-year-old kid and they can't make the determination, good parenting says you're going to do stuff that other parents won't do. That's the reason why I told you I have ultimate respect for Karen and her husband. They're doing something extraordinary. And I equate it to, when you understand the science, you have a choice. You're on the deck of the Titanic. Do you want to listen to music or do you want to get in a boat? And listen, again, when you laugh and you don't see me laugh, pay attention. I'm serious, because I know how serious you are about asking me this question. And I want to make sure that you're getting the message loud and clear. You're not going to like it. You can put blue blocking glasses, send them to school looking like an Eskimo, but I don't think it's good enough in a 5G world. That's the truth. And you're right. The screens, the iPads, you know, all the social media stuff, like you take that shit away from your kids, I mean, they're going to hate your guts. They're probably going to hate me. Next, go ahead. I'm assuming you're the wife. Yeah. All right, cool. Navarre Beach, Florida. What? Navarre Beach, Florida. Simple, right? Now I know what you want to ask. Why? I know. I can tell you it's not. I can tell you it's not. You didn't ask why. 16 miles of protected beach that can never be developed because it's federally protected. It sits right next to a place called Portofino in Pensacola Beach. Ask my wife how many times we've been. A lot. So there's your answer. And if you want to know what's the best area in the United States to live, yep, done that biohack too. The Gulf. Between probably, and here's the key, there is a seasonal component, probably between Orange Beach, Mississippi, all the way to Tallahassee. You can't go there this time of the year because all the rednecks from the southeast, that's where they go. So it's like New York City or Boston from right around Memorial Day all the way through probably Labor Day. But let me tell you what, you come down to see us in September, October, November, you'll be like, there ain't nobody here. What do I tell all my members? The single number one benefit with 5G, blue light, is to look at population density. So this is why Vermont's good. I told Dave this last year. You know, everybody thought when I gave the talk last year, oh, you're going to have us move away from Vermont. We love it. We love Bernie Sanders and all that. You can stay in Vermont. Just get naked in Vermont. The population density here is phenomenal, okay? You guys, you're all what I like to call tree huggers, and I don't mean that a bad way. I think it's an awesome thing. You know, and I want you to continue on that and continue on the things that this community is doing. I just want you to do it better than you were doing it before. Shoot.
More and more people are getting tattoo all over the body.
Oh, you are trying to get me in trouble. Okay, I'm going to give you some homework because this would take a really long time to discuss. If you put my name and tattoos in a Google box, you will be overwhelmed and you will see threads where tattoo artists have come after me, this, that. That is the stupidest thing you could do. In fact, I'll give you a plug. I promise you in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I am writing a Patreon. I'm not writing, I've already written it. It's about one of my patients who was an IT specialist who worked in the floor of the hospital in blue light constantly. She had a tattoo, I'm not going to tell you where, but it was in red and blue ink. It was 22 years she had it. After working in her current job for 8 years, the red part of the tattoo started to get raised, and I looked at it, and you know, this wasn't even on the part of the body I was taking care of for. I looked at it, I said, look, that's cancer. And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, that red ink is made out of cinnabar. Cinnabar is made with mercury. When you're around 5G, mercury goes from being inert to not inert. And guess what? Do you know what the molecular resonance frequency of mercury is? Blue light. It's 476. That's in the blue range. So guess what? She had this thing exposed to blue light through her job. And guess what the biopsy came back when she went to the dermatologist? T-cell lymphoma. Remember the slide that said down there that UV light blocks or educates your T cells? That's why I knew that was a big area. Do you know where more T cells are in your body than anywhere else? Zach Bush ain't gonna like this. The skin, not the gut. So guess what? You know what her prescription was? I try to talk her out of getting it cut out. I try to tell her to eat seafood and pork and get in the sun. You know why? The methionine is the external time crystal, and if she got in the sun, then I can get the internal time crystal. Mixing pork with seafood gives her DHA. Those are the 3 key gears for the circadian clock mechanism in her eye and every peripheral clock in front of every gene in her body. And she didn't want to do it. And she happened to get lucky. She found the right doctor who knew the science, and she still didn't listen. You know why? Low dopamine. And I knew it. And I felt so bad. She had this hellacious operation. She's going to survive, but this is an instructive post. This post is going to go live sometime relatively soon because my members, you ask all of them, none of them knew until I posted the blog post that I did yesterday. I instructed all of them. I gave them doctor's orders to read this blog before they came to this so they would even know more. Because guess what? Methionine starts every single protein translation. That means anytime messenger RNA turns on DNA, that means your ubiquination rate is higher. When vitamin A drops, that's exactly what happens in a cell. Guess what you have to do? You have to make proteins. If you have no methionine, guess what happens? Cancer is the next step. And the reason why is electron chain transport speeds up to offset the loss of methionine. Methionine is the only amino acid on Earth in bacteria and in eukaryotes, again, not good news for Zach, that controls protein synthesis. 3.8 billion years. One codon, AUG. Tryptophan is ACC. Every other amino acid has multiple codons. Why did nature make it unique? That's the question for the non-mitochondriac to answer. I try to push you in that direction today. Don't mess with Mother Nature is what I'm telling you. You're not designed to have, look, this is the way I tell my people. When I do talk to my people about food, I'll try to give it to you straight. When jelly donuts grow on trees, you can eat them. When babies come out the vagina with a tattoo, everybody can get them. guys all laugh, but remember what I told you about the Venn diagram? It's actually simpler than you think. And the thing is, you have to realize, everybody in this room is an ignorant talking monkey. Me included. I told you I was a moron for 40 years. The problem is, we don't realize that our wants, needs, and desires are what brought us to the place we are right now. If I can get you to realize it's okay to want to read Jack's blogs on a blue screen device, just make sure when you do it, you got a turtleneck shirt on and you got glasses on. If you're smart, print it out and go to the beach. That's even better. You know, there's many ways to kill the cat. But just do me a favor. The perspective that I want you to approach this from now on is the mitochondriac perspective, not the food guru perspective. Elimination diets are moronic. Supplements are moronic. All of them. I don't like it. You ask any of my members. I want none of them. Now, do I use them with other people that I take care of one-on-one? Yeah, because I have full control of what they're going to do. I have no control over you guys, and half of you want me to leave. Lady back there, they brought me the water. You know it was you. Awesome. Yeah, I'm not a fan. You know why? It's more destructive to the skin than meets the eye. You know what the key thing is with a tattoo? Get it in the sun. If you get it in the sun, you can actually keep it quiet. The problem is, if your tattoo is exposed to a lot of blue light, and just think about it, most of the people who get tattoos, what do? They go out at night all the time. I mean, I live in New Orleans. Everybody that's out after 1 o'clock has a tattoo. Think about rock stars, why they kill themselves. They're all tattooed. You know the guy that just died from, what's his name? Bennington from Lincoln Park? Tattooed to the max. How about the idiot from, what's his name? Bob Hayes. You know, remember took all the fat people and worked them out on TV? He was 51 years old, had a massive heart attack. Go check a picture of him out online. He's tattooed up like he looks like, a tattoo artist. It's no shock. And the thing is, here's the guy. He's eating a paleo diet, a Western A-price diet. He works out in a blue lit gym and he's got tattoos on. Now he's selling drugs for a drug company and he's going vegan. I mean, hello? I mean, stupid is as stupid does. You went from the fire to the frying pan. Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, do you know why it affects the bones? If you think about it, if you lower the quantum yield. Remember the gentleman in the back of the room that asked me the first question about obesity? And I said, if you throw the tarp over the tree, are you going to get any oranges? Well, what does bone grow with? What are the two hormones in men? Vitamin D and testosterone. What did I tell you? They both are affected by UV light. How do you get it? You get it through your skin. So of course your skin's going to control it. Let me just tell you something. There's not a freaking organ system in the body that's not controlled by the skin. Do you know how bad I wanted to tell you that last year? But I didn't have the damn study to back it up. But I knew. And I'm giving you the proof that I knew because that's why I called out Magda Havas. That's why I called out people at PaleoFX. I said, I know where the pieces fit because I've seen them fall apart many, many times. And it didn't take a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon to figure out you had to have a blue light opsin somewhere else besides your eye. I just didn't know it was going to show up in the vessels, the fat, and the skin. Did you not see the picture I showed you about lights? Didn't I tell you? Look, you're in Vermont. Candles, girl. Vermont candles. Come on. And I'll tell you what I do at home. I don't do it now because we're in the process of building the farm. But I take my old wine bottles and I put kerosene oil in it and I put something called a Vino Glow on them. If you've never seen it, Google Vino Glow. It's spelled V-I-N-O-G-L-O. You can turn your lanterns, your old bottles, I call them dead soldiers, into lanterns. You can put them in a sconce. Looks awesome. Hold on. You already asked a question. Let's go to this young lady.
First, thank you, because I've never, ever been at a conference and seen a doctor give this much time to the booth and answering questions. But I want you to help me work through, the eye has the yellow pigment in it because we're supposed to get it from the sun, the blue light, and then as a defense protective mechanism, you get the nucleus sphenic cataract is yellow. So if our fat is meant to receive the blue light, and that's a yellow hue, what
What's the complementary color of yellow? So think about it. You answered your own question. It's a blue light protection mechanism. What the brain's trying to tell you, too much blue light is affecting your outer retina. So what does the lens do? It opacifies.
I know that's the protection, but what's our protection that happens in our skin or our fat from that?
Well, your skin actually tends to thicken. That's the reason why all diabetics have thick skin. I don't expect you guys to know this, but I'm a surgeon. You know I cut everybody open. If you look on Google about the effects of diabetes on the skin, you'll notice that they get thicker. The other disease that it happens, and I've written a blog for you guys about it, the psoriasis blog. What do you know about the psoriasis blog? The skin gets thicker. Why? Because the skin cells turn over too fast. Why? Ubiquination rates are high. What did I just tell you about methionine? When ubiquination rates are high, by definition, you have a blue light disease. What's the light dermatologists use to fix psoriasis if they're smart? 312 nanometer light, UVB light. Shocker, huh? It's amazing. That's why I said, if you believe that the sun is toxic, you just do me a favor. Do not sign up in my clubs. I just can't fix that. But if you heard anything today that could make you go, then I'd say dive deeper. Come down the rabbit hole, because trust me, I got a lot more than just what I gave you today. Shoot. Well, yeah, well, I'm going to tell you this. You got to realize you're talking to somebody who did that for most of my life. The big problem for me, and most of you don't know this, at Vermont last year, I was still taking call. I no longer take call, and I'll tell you why I moved. I went from residency to Nashville, Nashville to Mississippi, now I'm in New Orleans. The place that tried to hire me in New Orleans, they knew the people I worked with in Nashville, and they told him, if you can hire this guy, you need to get him. Because his patients do phenomenal. He never has complications. It's not because I'm any better doctor than my other neurosurgery colleagues. I make everybody do the shit that I'm telling you today. And guess what? They magically get better. But here's the funny thing. When they told me they wanted to hire me, what did I tell them? I had two issues. I don't take call, and I don't operate past 3 p.m. You guys all know the reason for that, because the blue light toxicity that I get in the hospital is off the chain. So what did the hospital decide to do? They had to change the hospital bylaws to get me. Now, why does that work? You gotta remember, neurosurgeons, there's only 3,800 of us in the United States, so we're not easy to come by. And when I told them what I would do, they're like, okay, we're all in. And that's when me and my wife decided, okay, we're gonna build the longevity center there, because guess what? Now the patients in South Louisiana are beginning to get the magic too. And here's the beautiful part. They're at the 28th latitude. You know that Louisiana and Mississippi are 49th and 50th in the state in just about, in the country in just about everything, okay? So if you're confident that your theory on quantum biology is correct, would you go to a place where everybody's healthy, or would you go where the train wrecks live? And here's the benefit. Turns out the train wrecks happen to live where the solution is present. You just have to get the train wrecks to understand the story simple. Why do Southerners listen to me? They don't want to know the science. They're like, Doc, I just got to go out and see the sunrise. I can drink my coffee out there, take my clothes off. It's not hard to sell. You know what the real problem is? And I guess we got to talk about this, because I lit up 2 ladies yesterday about this topic. We haven't talked about it. What's one of the other implications of this talk? Ladies, if you wear makeup, you have to get my foot taken out or your ass. Why? All makeup since about 1977 have UVA blockade in it, sunblock. So guess what? The reason you get blotches on your skin, it's called melasma, is because the blue light can penetrate through that. You get unfettered blue, you have no way to regenerate, and you get melanogenesis on your skin. So guess what I'm gonna tell you? One of the other ladies who signed up to be a member, who came last night, she's like, what about my wrinkles? I said, do you go by and see my wife? I said, this girl's in the sun all the time. She ain't that wrinkly for how old she is. I've seen some of the people up here at 60 years old, and they're a lot more wrinkly than my wife. She's at the 28th latitude, okay? 7 years ago, that woman is outside. There's only one thing I fight about my wife with now. Light. That's it. And you know why I fight for her? Because I love her. I want to keep her rock starish. Okay? I'm so proud of her, the way she's changed. And she's a tough nut to crack, trust me. She loves fighting with me. She does. But the thing is, when you care about your wife, you want to go all in. It goes with the lady that I talked to from Atlanta. I fixed me first, then I fixed my son. But you know, the toughest nut for me to crack was my daughter. And I knew I had to get my wife to do that. I told y'all last year kind of what I did. You don't believe it? Go back and listen to the talk. I ain't going to rehash it here because my wife's here this year. She may kick my ass. But the big issue is you need to understand that makeup can really affect you. And I said to the lady last night, has it ever struck you that only women get melasma and men don't? And the only men that tend to get it tend to be gay because they wear makeup too. And guess what? Don't wear makeup. And now the wrinkle story, this will shock you. You know what frequency of light activates fibroblasts? Red. What did I tell you about the sun? 42% red. You always get red light when you're outside, ladies, so guess what? If you want your wrinkles to get better, why do they get better? Dr. Boros answered the question, and you didn't listen. Because your mitochondria make frickin' water. You get wrinkles when you're a prune and you're dehydrated. Because you can't make water. What did I tell you? When the baby comes out the vagina, it's 80% water. Most of the silly talking monkeys in this room, probably 60% water. The ones that got more wrinklies in their face because their heteroplasmy rate's up, because you ain't got enough sun. Shocker. And guess what? The dermatologists don't want you to know that either. And you know what the dermatologists use when you go get wrinkles and try to reduce them? Red light lasers. Shocker. Come see us. We'll charge you $1,000 for something that would have cost you freaking nothing. Or, like the lady over here said, you would have had a way better time in Mexico. Let me just tell you. All right, shoot, all the way in the back. The back has been quiet. Say it again. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would tell you, my answer is actually, this is again where you guys can see that I really dug Jeff's talk. Jeff, they put their hands in zebra guts. They do all kinds of crazy shit like that. When it's natural, and this it's a very complex answer, but I'm going to try to make it simple. You want nothing on your skin except what nature allows. So dirt, like these ladies spend money on exfoliation shit and all kinds of crap. You don't want to do any of that stuff. The only thing that I'm cool with for my patients, like if I put an incision on them when I do like an ACDF, I'll tell them to use coconut oil for the first couple of days. Why? Because it actually keeps them off antibiotics. Just so you guys know, I have now started not using antibiotics in almost all my cases. And that's making me, everybody's looking at me like, oh, he's going to have a high infection rate. You know why I don't have to worry about it? My people are in the sun. Most of them are not taking supplements. Most of them are naked. And they are improving their immune system the way nature told them to do it. And if you get them to do that, like if I do surgery on somebody and say they come in with a vitamin D of 23, 24, what I'll do is I'll give them a prescription to get outside, tell them exactly what to do, but I'll put their surgery off for 4 to 5 weeks. Then I operate on them. You know why? Their redox is higher. When your redox is low, you know what you're going to get? Complications. What's the other question for you guys as patients? Anytime you have surgery, make sure it's in and out and get in the sun right away. Nothing on your skin. I would just tell you, I may bend a couple of rules here, there, and the other, but the standard answer for a general audience that's learning what skin in the game is, I want you to think about a baby. When it comes out, you need to do the same thing. Women who put stuff on the baby like crazy. People don't even realize rosacea, eczema, allergies, all reduced. It's been shown in the literature reduced by sunlight. Here's the best part. If you Google this, you'll be shocked when you learn it. All-cause mortality. That means all diseases on planet Earth are reduced by sunlight. Every single disease. The study's been repeated multiple times. Why don't ever you know about it? Because guess what? If you did, you wouldn't need me. You wouldn't need medicine. Just like the guys in the Western A. Price, they didn't need medicine. Just like Jeff told you. Yeah, we can give them antibiotics, it doesn't matter. Comes right back. Why? Because the sun never changes whether it has to live.
Your talk mentioned deuterium.
Yes.
Is there anything you would advise us to do about deuterium?
If you're healthy, no. But what I am advising you about, just so you know, every decade you get older, your heteroplasmy rate goes up. Heteroplasmy is a fancy term for the amount of deuterium that's in your TCA and urea cycle. I call it Krebs bicycle because it's basically 2 cycles. Those wheels have to spin fast. The enzyme that Dr. Boros told you about, fumarate hydratase, that adds water to both cycles. So the key story is every decade you go up, your heteroplasmy raises by 10%. Who taught us that? Doug Wallace. He's the world expert in mitochondrial medicine. So if you're 42 years old, you're in your 5th decade. That means you're approaching 50%. What has Doug Wallace found in his research? When you get to 60 to 70% heteroplasmy, that's when the shit starts hitting the fan because your mitochondria are too bad. How do you fix mitochondria? You already know the answer. 2 self-regulatory programs. You recycle or replace. It's called autophagy or apoptosis. What controls both? UV and red light. Why should you pay attention to that? It's the only 2 frequencies in sunlight that your eye is can't see. The reason why you can't see it, it's called the quantum Zeno effect. If you saw it, it would change what it does in reality. Those are what run autophagy and apoptosis, which is why I told you to be like the Sphinx every day. When does it happen? Blue and red light are always yoked. The next light that comes diurnally is UVA. Your job, if you choose to accept it, is to see the transition from infrared A to UVA as much as you can for as long as you can to stay away from guys like me. Got it? Guys like Dave Asprey, guys like Rob Wolf, guys like anybody who has got an agenda that's not nature. It is. It can be. The only problem with it is that I want to warn you about, you have to test them for EMF because of what I told you. Now that you know melanopsin's in the skin, it's got to scare the shit out of you because I told you the electromagnetic fields can also knock the vitamin A off the opsin. So not all of them are created equal. For example, Ben Greenfield was pushing one. I happened to test it. I would never buy that one. Now, did I? I'm not saying. You can go talk to Ben about it. I don't like throwing people that I like under the bus who I think are doing good things, but what I teach my people, if I tell you I tested it and it's not good, well, you know what I'll say to you? Buy a meter and test it for yourself and see if I'm wrong. When you learn, then you'll know. If you watch what I do, you'll learn. What I do, that's my infrared sauna. I'll tell you what I do like though. Instead of an infrared sauna, I like a hot tub. Because I use that to do something called the Fournier effect. No, I'm not telling you what that is right now. But it's good. Really good. So hot tubs are usually pretty good. In the back. Yeah, dude, that's my hometown. Love it. Never will go back. Just so you know, in the last 6 months, 4 people on Manhattan Island have been electrocuted by stepping on I think it was a manhole cover. The other one was touching a light post because of the jump conduction, just so you know that. You can look it up. One was in the New York Times, the other, I think the rest of them were in the Post. And I'm not going to tell you how I know this, but I happen to have a member who's, how shall we say, an industry insider into New York and Boston, and he knows all the dirt. So guess what? New York City, Boston, I can tell you the worst cities, because I've shared them with my members. The worst city right now in the United States is anywhere around Denver, Colorado Springs, and Boulder. The second worst place, Austin, Texas. Third worst, Los Angeles. San Francisco, Boston, New York City, Atlanta. Those are probably the top 8. Now, is that list going to change? The lady over here asked before, Jack, it's going to change. So it goes back to the story that I told you guys before about the wildebeest and the crocodiles. What is a mitochondriac's position given this information? Do not set your roots down anywhere. You have to be ready to be a traveling wheelbarrow, because if the shit hits the fan where you are and you're getting sick and no doctors have answers for you, you heard what I said in the back of the room yesterday when Nick was on the stage. I said 5G is going to be gold for me. Why? Because people are going to get sick, and then you're all going to know that I was right. The ERs are going to be filled. Cancer, autoimmunity, everything's going to explode. Everything. There's going to be weird shit happen. You already saw the picture with the Fitbit yesterday. And just realize that happened in a 4G network. You know how many people are going to get sick using an iWatch in 5G? Huh. And God forbid if there's a tattoo under that iWatch. Go ahead, swing the hat. You, the hat swinger.
So, what about full spectrum candidates? Some dermatologists encourage that.
Listening to a dermatologist about the truth is kind of like asking a vegan what kind of steak you should eat. I mean, you have to realize that question for me has zero face validity. And for you to ask me that question, did you listen to what I just said? And I'm not trying to dress you down. I'm actually trying to elevate you up. I'm telling you, I know why dermatologists believe what they believe. Because they don't understand the basic science. They don't believe, they actually really believe the sun is toxic. I have heard my dermatology friends tell their patients, take these pills and don't go in the sun. You know it, I know it, so why would you ever care what they say? Because you look at them as the experts still. You have to convince yourself that maybe they're wrong. And the only way you're going to do that is being a curious, talking monkey. That's it. That's the key.
So my sister just had her thyroid removed, and I'm wondering what you would recommend in terms of yes or no to antibiotics. I'm assuming no, sun exposure, and getting into the ocean.
It's a tough question because I don't know what your redox is. So guess what? Your sister's redox, if she's minus 200 or below, the answer is yes to antibiotics. If the answer is above, no. And that's why it's an N=1 game. You can't answer it. I don't know about your sister's haplotype. I don't know where she lives. I don't know if she's vegan like her sister. Got it? These things all matter. And you know what? That's why you can't give a canned answer to an audience like this. When you make the case that I just made, everybody in this room is a different talking monkey. I don't treat anybody the same. I'm not a randomized controlled clinical trial doctor anymore. I don't believe that stuff. I don't believe taking 1 million people in a study, having poor methodology, and then coming with an average result can ever lead you to evidence-based medicine based on how mitochondria work. If you're part of that paradigm, I'm out. I learned that lesson 15 years ago. That's the reason to this day, I'm still pissed at my profession.
Is there any failure to the device that has green cell cells that it's noisy in the ear?
Oh, you talking about the V-light? Yeah, there's kind of a benefit, but to be honest with you, you get more of a benefit driving into your car, rolling the window down, and putting the sun on your ear. So if you want to waste your money and put technically a wire in your ear in a 5G world that's right underneath your temporal lobe, you could do it, but I'm not.
How do you know what your redox level is?
I got a redox blog. You can go read it. There's 30 labs on there. You do, say 20 of them, you get a pretty good idea. And guess what? Most of those labs are easy to do. But I told you, the key is the difference, the potential difference between cytochrome 1 and oxygen. So remember what I said to you before. You only use 2 metabolic pathways with high oxygen. So that means when you fat burn or use protein, you should have high redox. You know why people can't fat burn? Let me just, I got to tell you this story because you guys are food people. So it's not that I want to throw this guy under the bus, but he's a perfect example for you to answer your question. Raise your hand if you know this guy, Jimmy Moore. Perfect. So Jimmy has been eating a nutritional ketosis diet for almost a decade. He lives in blue light. Every year you see him, he expands. He gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And people still follow him. And I've told him for 10 years, Jimmy, you need a technology diet. You don't need ketosis. You know what? Why I'm bringing this point up? I just told you, if your redox is low from blue light, you can't fat burn. So why in the hell would you ever eat fat? Because you know what your body's going to do with it? It's going to save it to turn it into a stem cell. So when your environment changes and you make a laser, you can reverse the problem. That's it. So you don't want to eat a lot of fat if your mitochondria suck. Because guess what? The only way you can fat burn is if your mitochondria work. Who did those studies? Doug Wallace. That's not Jack Kruse's opinion. Totally out there. So the key is you have to change. This also brings up another point. My members happen to know something none of you know, but most of you think the Warburg shift is bad. What if I was to tell you those enterocytes you heard about from Zach Bush, those fiber optic cables? What if I told you that those cells worked on a Warburg metabolism? Would you be shocked? The answer is they are. You know the Mueller cells in your eyes that are fiber optic cables in your eyes that I told you about last year? They also use a Warburg metabolism. But yet, y'all all think it's bad. Do you know why we use a Warburg metabolism when oxygen levels are low? Because it decreases proliferation. That's called growth. What is cancer called? Uncontrolled growth. So guess how you get cancer? When you use a Warburg metabolism and there's too much oxygen in the system. What does that do? It speeds up electron chain transport. What did I tell you that vitamin D, the VDR receptor, and nitric oxide do? Slow electron chain transport. How do you make all those things? Sunlight. Become a mitochondriac. That's all I'm telling you. Once you understand these basic mechanisms, you're going to sit down and go, man, this is just too easy. And it is. It's not, look, the application of my information is the Sphinx. That's the reason the Egyptians put it in the desert where they did. It's an animal and a human. All four extremities grounded to the ground. The eyes are looking to the east to see the sunrise every morning. You guys also know the story about the pyramids that are right next to the Sphinx? On the top of every pyramid, the apex was gold. How do we know that? They went up there, scraped the rocks, they found gold atoms in it. It's been stolen through the years. Anybody want to guess why the Egyptians are famous for using gold? The answer is right there. Gold is an atomic mirror for red light. So you know how all those black guys, the Anubians in the desert, built the damn pyramid? They made sure that they were using gold reflection to get the more red light to make their ATPase spin faster. That's how freaking smart they were. Okay? They paid attention to nature. We don't. Matt.
So you mentioned that the laser that's created when UV and when deuterium is pushed on.
Deuterium has to be pressurized either by an electric or magnetic field.
So how does that destroy fat mass or lower fat?
Because what happens is the fat in the sub-Q layer, remember, monkeys don't have sub-Q fat. They're born razor thin. Humans do. That's where we hide our stem cells. So what happens when the nitric oxide's there, it raises the blood vessel and the fat up to where that deuterium laser can be done. And it happens actually in your capillaries. So this is the reason why hemoglobin goes all the way to 280. It's also the reason why exclusions on water is 270. But the key thing is all your aromatic amino acids all go all the way, one of them goes all the way to 100 nanometers. So when somebody tells you that UVC light is toxic for life, that's another narrative that Jack Kruse has a problem with now. I'm kind of got a feeling that with UVC, I think the spectrum has to be controlled. And if you know this, I know nobody around you really knows this, but in Roland Van Wyck's book, what did he say? we don't know where the extreme low frequency light is, and we don't know what the spectrum of it is. My belief, it's when we get spectroscopes small enough to actually measure what's going on in the red blood cell and in the plasma, I think we're going to have an answer. But I can tell you this. Because of water's exclusion zone refractive change, I don't think, from a water perspective, you have to go much lower than probably 220. And I say that because the aromatic amino acids are the ones that absorb UVC light the most. The rest of them don't. You know, and here's the crazy thing. You know, we're talking about Jeff again. When I'm telling you about UVC light and it cleans everybody up, anybody understand now why they ate baboon shit and didn't get sick? Because they're making freaking lasers left and right in their body that destroy every bacteria in their body. Bacteria can't tolerate UVA light, never mind UVC light. So you realize you have a mechanism in you that allows you to make UVB light and UVC light just if you get a little UVA light when it's hot. You can actually do it when you get blue light when it's cold from the sun. So this is the reason why people in nature, they tend not to get sick. That's the reason why Ben saw what he saw in Uganda. That's the reason why Jeff told you what he told you last night. And he was brutally honest. He told everybody, I don't know why. You all do. Back. Say it again, louder. Well, the flus are a little different story because remember, they're not bacteria. Anybody want to know or take a guess what makes viruses grow faster than anything else? UV light. You know what happens in the oceans every day? Every day the sun comes up, you make a ton of viruses in the water. Why is that important for our evolution? Now you're getting a real lesson here. We're designed by nature, like that zonulin that Zach talked about. Do you know that human primates are the only ones that have zonulin? The rest of the primates don't have it. We're the only ones. You know what that tells you? Nature designed to build your gut to be leaky for a reason. You know what the reason is? So you absorb the viruses in seawater because you're designed to eat a lot of seafood. Why do you do that? Anybody want to know the junk that Zach was talking about? You know what that junk is? It's called HERV oncogenes from viruses. We're made up, our junk in between our genes is made up 100% of viral parts. And guess what? We keep the ones that allow us to change. Do you know why we use that? Why did we go from monkey to human so fast? Why don't we have any missing link bones? Because nothing changes a program faster than viruses. Nothing. And it turns out the Human Genome Project, the one thing it has shown, that we have way more viral parts than anyone wanted to know. And guess what? That chimp and that baby that was on that slide, they both have within 200 of the same genes. And I'm not kidding you. What that tells you is the software program is way more important than the hardware. And what was this talk really all about? The software that controls the hardware. That's why I'm telling you what I told you today. The implications of this are humongous. I just took the whipped cream off for you today. All right, one more and then we're done.
A lot of folks are reporting that leaky gut is the key to autoimmune disease.
No.
Before you were talking about leaky gut and saying that.
No. Did you see what QT14 said? Methionine and tryptophan are the key to every autoimmune disease. So now most of you got to go, what is Jack really saying? Jack's telling you that they're all due to circadian mismatches. And the reason why is those are the two amino acids that have single codons. One controls protein translation. The other one controls the seasonal approach. What does everybody in this room know that Jack's not bullshitting about? Every autoimmune condition is always associated with low vitamin D. What did you learn today from Chris Masterjohn's slide? Low vitamin D happens when you're blue light toxic. Guess why Terry Rawls hasn't really fixed her problem with her minding the mitochondria and all her leafy vegetables? Because she lives in Iowa City. She works in a hospital. That's the reason why. And you can fix it. Guess what? Kids on the equator, they don't get autism. Kids on the equator don't get autoimmune conditions either. You want to know something? Every disease that I told you today, the further you go from the equator, the incidence goes through the roof. Worst place to get breast cancer? Go up in north of Canada. Go up into Finland. Go up into Sweden. Ask yourself why. What's the highest rate of type 1 diabetics in the world now? Finland. Here's the craziest thing. The vegans, I told this young lady yesterday, being a vegan makes sense when you live in a tropical environment. That's the reason why the Indians got away with it for so long. Draw a line in India, the equator goes right through it. The south part are all vegans. The north part are the Sherpas. They're all dark, living at high elevations. They get no sickness. The number one cause of diabetes in the world right now is the Indian crisis. They have 340 million people who are type 2 diabetics. Do you know why? They do a good job with their eye, but they're covered by sheets, and now they're using blue light because they've been indoctrinated to the westernization. It's the same story that went on with the Inuits. See, the problem is it's different. See, the disease they're going to get is going to be different than the ones the Inuits get. The Inuits get fat and they get diabetic. But when you start to see how the pieces fit, you're going to be able to explain a lot of things. See, when you have other people come and tell you, oh, it's the microbiome, and what did I just tell you? The microbiome only interacts with your cells when you're normal for 2 days. Tell me how it's the microbiome. Do me one more favor. Tell me that Jeff's wrong, what he did. I mean, he stood up here and told all of you, you know, guys, this broke our hypothesis. We thought when you eat shit on a shingle, it would simplify the floor. How many times have I listened to the paleo morons say that? Through 10 years. And how many times did I just sit there, have to take the arrows, and as soon as I saw that melanopsin paper, I went, game, set, match. Now, you've been loaded up with my USB. Do what you want with it. Thank you, and I appreciate it.